Well, good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome the audience here and the audience at home to Sherborn Advisory Committee's public hearing on the articles contained in the 2014 warrant that will be voted on by the town at our annual town meeting scheduled for Tuesday evening, April 29th at 7 p.m. in Lindquist Commons at the regional campus. Before I go any further, I would like to take an opportunity in particular to thank Pat Cassell for all that she does in making it possible for all the folks at home to see this and for the work she did helping to set this up. So that said, I'd like to introduce now the members of the Sherborn Advisory Committee. For all of you who do not know, my name is Mary Wolf and I am this year's chair of the committee. And from my right, we have Barb Kantorsky, Jeff Rudin, Vicki Rellis, Jeff Waldron. The two, I refer to these guys as the two Jeffs, so
Both good looking.
I apologize. Jeff Waldron, Vicki Rellis, Russ Pollock, Ben Williams, who is the vice chair of advisory this year, the ever wonderful Jeff Rudin, and Lanny Rubin. So, okay. I would like to take a few minutes to go over the process of the rules for the conduct of business today, and as we go forth with the meeting, this is what we will be doing. Many of you probably received these in the mail, and I'll just read them for you. The format of the public hearing for each warrant article is as follows. The proponent of the article is invited to make a presentation, and that presentation will be limited to 5 minutes. The chair will open the meeting for public comments and questions by all those present. Then the chair will close the meeting for public comment and questions and open the meeting to advisory committee for their questions and comments. After the advisory discussion, I will again open the meeting for any new public comments on the particular article. At any time during the discussions, an advisory committee member may request additional information from the article proponent or from another resource, and in that case, the public hearing on the particular article will be placed in recess until the final public hearing session. I also would say that comments that people will be making from the floor here will be limited to 2 minutes each. After all new comments have been heard, I will bring the public hearing on that particular article to a close and open the voting session. The format for the voting session will be as follows. I will request a motion for the disposition of the warrant article. Advisory committee members will discuss and deliberate the merits of the article and the pending motion. During discussion, an advisory committee member may request deferral of the vote on the warrant article, in which case I will honor that request and defer the vote to the final voting session. And at the conclusion of the voting session, voting session discussion, I will make a motion on the article and put it to a vote. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay. I just want to add to that that we will be following the rules very closely, particularly with respect to time. We have a full warrant, and with any luck, we'll complete it all today, but that remains to be seen. 2 advisory committee members, Russ Pollock to my right and Vicki Rellis, have graciously agreed to act as timers for this, so if you are speaking from the audience and you see them giving you a signal, that means your time is running out. I'm also going to ask everyone who comes to speak from the floor to both keep to the topic under discussion and to ensure that your comments bring something new to the table. I'm going to discourage people simply getting up and repeating what previous people have said. That is not really helpful to the discussion. And I will, if I discover that happening, I will ask the person to either come up with new information or to please be seated. I also understand that there are some articles under discussion that may have some strong emotions attached to them, and I would just ask everyone to remember to speak in a manner in which they themselves would like to be spoken to. We will address all articles on the warrant in the order in which they appear on the warrant. We will take a brief break mid-morning. We'll have a very brief lunch break sometime between noon and 1. And it is my hope to close the meeting finally by 5 o'clock this afternoon. We'll see. Are there any questions from anyone on the advisory committee about this? Okay. Then we'll proceed to Elliot.
Elliot Taylor, 30 North Main. I think 2 minutes is a very short time. There have been times in the past when I've been speaking, my 2 minutes was up and I've just started to make my point. And I think that 2 minutes is a ridiculously small, short period of time. So I think that maybe that should be extended to 5 minutes. And as I say, I think it's just unconstitutional to cut someone off when they're just starting to make their point.
Thank you for your comment, Elliot. All right, Article 1. Article 1, to hear and act on the reports of the various town officers and committees as contained in the annual town report or otherwise. I will take a motion to recommend favorable action. Oh, sorry, I'm way ahead of myself here. Are there any public comments or anything on that? Okay, does anyone advisory have comments? Okay. So now, I will take a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 1.
So moved.
Second? Second. Okay, all in favor? I would actually, Corey, that is parliamentary, there are 9 members of the committee. Our vote today is unanimous. I would like to know how I should announce the vote. Should I announce it as 8-0, or should I announce it as unanimous?
I would announce it as unanimous. It's the members present.
Right, yeah, okay. So the vote is unanimous. Okay. Article 2, to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money, and if so, what sum, for unpaid bills or to take any other action related thereto. The amounts are as follows. For Thomson Reuters West, and that is for updates that the town gets to Mass General Laws, $132.50. For Flagship Press, for the printing of the annual town report, that is $914. And to Beaver Solutions, for beaver deceivers that we use to address the beaver problem in town, $1,556 even. All right, are there any public comments on that? Elliot?
I'm opposed to this town spending any money on beavers. They should all be shot on sight. They're a nuisance. I told this to Mass Audubon 30 years ago. Get rid of them. They're a damn nuisance, and here they are, and we're spending a lot of money, a lot of time at meetings, and we should only spend money on ammunition to shoot them. Thank you.
Thank you, Elliot. Okay, if there are no other public comments, just actually for the future, if people are planning to make, if you can line up at the microphone so that we don't have to wait for everybody to get up there, that would be great. So I'm closing the public comment, and I'm asking for any questions or comments from advisory. Okay. Any new public comments? Okay. Then I will request a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 2. We need a motion first. Second? Okay. All in favor? Okay, the vote is unanimous by all those present. Okay, now we will address Article 3, which is the article that deals with the town's omnibus budget. We will be voting the line items that I will read out for Article 3 as they appear on the model that the town accountant produces, thank you, Ruth, and that advisory uses to track submitted budgets, changes to those budgets, and revenues and disbursements throughout the budget season. Our votes today are based on information in Model 5, which Ruth distributed to us yesterday. The town currently has a free cash position of $1,352,974,000. And the current model shows us also with an expected $136,000 available for either growing the town's overall cash reserves or for funding some of the smaller capital items that we will be looking at in Article 8. We will speak to the funding, some of the smaller capital articles a little bit later in the day. If someone wishes to discuss a particular line item in the omnibus budget, I would ask you to call out hold when that line item comes up, and we will go back to all held items after we have voted all the non-held items. So, the line items in the omnibus budget are as follows. Selectmen, line 122, Selectmen payroll, $234,487. Selectmen expenses, $27,950. Town council, line 151, $65,000. Line 430, transfer station, $263,000. Line 141, assessor's payroll, $102,173. Assessor's expenses, $13,880. Line 145, treasurer's payroll, $107,851. Treasurer's expenses, $26,697. Line 146, tax collector payroll, $95,661. Tax collector expenses, $20,106. Line 135, town accountant payroll, $87,869. Town accountant expenses, $9,650. Town accountant annual audit, $25,000. Line 131, advisory committee payroll, $460. Advisory committee expenses, $3,350. Line 175, planning board payroll, $44,021. Planning board expenses, $1,560. Line 161, town clerk payroll, $86,137. Town clerk expenses, $5,308. Line 162, election and registration payroll, $28,866. Election and registration expenses, $13,768. Line 192, town building expenses, $195,150. Line 210, police payroll, $1,332,709. Let me reread that. $1,332,709.
Hold.
Line, Police Department expenses, $88,200. Police Cruiser, $46,500. Line 220, Fire Rescue Payroll, $357,831. Fire Rescue expenses, $99,230. Building Inspector's Payroll, $69,559. Building Inspector's expenses, $3,000. Line 303, Sherborn Schools, payroll and expenses, $4,392,083. Pine Hill Sped, $1,374,962. Sherborn Schools, excuse me, Dover Sherborn 766 out of district, $979,425.
Hold, please.
Line 301, Dover Sherborn Regional Assessment, $8,276,597. Dover Sherborn Regional Debt, $718,500
I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong line. Hold on that last one, please.
on the,
The 8 million, I didn't see that you were combining the two.
okay, so you,
I just want to talk about the regional benefits.
okay, you don't want to talk about Pine Hill OOD, is that correct?
I want to talk about Sherborn Schools OOD, and I want to talk about
Okay.
the region. I just don't know where to hold the best place. So
Okay, I'll hold
those
them,
two
I'll hold them
places.
both.
Thank you.
Okay. Dover Sherborn Regional Debt, $718,585. Minuteman Regional High School, $0. Tri-County Vocational Technical School, $29,532. Norfolk Agricultural, including transportation, $94,081. CM&D payroll, line 401, $538,488. CM&D expenses, $368,173. Line 512, excuse me, Board of Health payroll, $62,431. Board of Health expenses, $63,851. Line 610, library payroll, $268,015. Library expenses, $131,889. Line 650, Recreation Department expenses, $10,100. Line 635, Farm Pond payroll, $90,000. Farm Pond expenses, $16,750. Line 5,
Excuse me, hold.
that would be on Farm Pond expenses.
Yes, please.
Line 541, Council on Aging payroll, $100,100. Council on Aging expenses, $24,650. Line 171, Conservation payroll, $46,526. Conservation expenses, $4,978. Veterans Agent expenses, $5,900. Historical Commission, $500. Recycling, $3,997. Cemetery, $58,670. Elderly housing expenses, $183,259. General insurance, $176,800. Insurance employee benefits, and that is a town treasurer's projection, $2,136,722. Debt retirement, again, a town treasurer projection, $1,469,576. OPEB funding, $100,000.
Madam Chair,
Hold.
Madam, would you please express OPEB as work?
Other post-employment benefits.
Thank you.
You got my hold?
Yes, I did. Okay. And 900, line 990, reserve fund, $60,000. Okay. So, I would first like us to vote the items that have not been held in Article 3.
Could you repeat the numbers that have been held?
Yes. We have holds on the following items. Police payroll, line 210, for $1,332,709. Line 303, Sherborn Schools, OOD, $979,425. DS Regional Assessment to Sherborn, $8,276,597. That's line 301. Line 635, Farm Pond Expenses, $16,750. Line 171, Conservation Payroll, $46,526. And other post-employment benefits, contribution, $100,000.
Just for clarification, did you want the Dover Sherborn Regional High School benefits held, or just the?
Well, I'm going to speak to the benefits, but she grouped it with assessment. So that's why I held it there. I was waiting to hold the benefits, and
I'm
I'm slow on the math this morning, as you're about to find out.
I'm just reading it.
Understood.
All right, so, are there, other than on the hold items, are there any public comments on the rest of the items in the omnibus budget?
Yeah, no, my public comment would be, I want to thank you and your team there on advisory for all the hard work, also the budget makers. I know that a lot of work has gone into what we're doing here today to, get to this point, and I think it's terrific, and I want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay. So then I will close public comment and open the session for any advisory comment on the non-held line items of Article 3. Okay. Any new public comments?
What does it mean when you hold something? What does that mean?
It means that this enables us to pass most of the articles, and we'll discuss that, and then we will vote those individually. So it's just holding off for another 10 minutes or whatever, the discussion. And I would ask people who want to make a comment to line up at the microphone.
Just a question.
Please,
about
I would
what-
just ask anyone further who wishes to introduce yourself.
Michael Lee, 28 Wildwood. What does it mean for town treasurer projection on a budget line item rather than a budget item submitted like all the other departments?
This is, Pete is here. Pete, could you speak to that? I believe it's just that you're making your best estimate at this time.
Pete Owen, Stony Brook Road, Sherborn. These are the budget requests. I don't know why the word projection is necessarily in there.
Okay.
It's just
Yeah,
typical
so-
request.
Okay, well, that answers that question. I will open the voting session now, and I will request a motion for favorable, to recommend favorable action on all those items in Article 3, the omnibus budget, that do not currently have holds on them.
Can I ask one more question?
Well, the time for that is closed.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Do the advisory committee members have anything that they would like to make comments or discuss or deliberate on the non-held items? Okay. All right, so then I would, we have had the motion and we have had a second. All right, then I would ask all in favor. And that is 8-0, unanimous of all those present. All right, so let's go back and take the held items now. The first one is the police payroll, and that is line 210, $1,332,709.
Yes, I put the hold on that. We were slow on the math. We're not looking at the same thing you were looking at, so we have 4 numbers and we didn't group it together. I see the number that you have now, so I withdraw that hold.
Okay.
Thank you.
The next one, is, and that goes for the, does that apply to line 303 as well, the Sherborn Schools
No.
OOD? Okay.
No.
So that is the next line that has been held, Sherborn Schools OOD.
So I held that just to talk in the school budgets overall. I know a lot of work has gone into both the region and the Pine Hill school budgets. If I group all the numbers on this lead sheet with the very small numbers, try to get the delta, I see there within your 1.4% guidance overall. So I just would ask that it looks like we get the benefit. We're definitely seeing the benefit this year. It's a two-part question. We're seeing the benefit this year of reductions in the out-of-district special education. I just would hope that somebody could speak to that also in terms of the long-term implications on future budgets to the extent we have to be alert to what might happen next year and so on. The second part is how you're treating anything to do with anticipated circuit breakers, what you've done in this budget model.
Okay. I will, I guess I would ask Steve Bliss, if he is here, to say a few words about the projections for the future as far as OOD is concerned. I think it's something that changes from year to year, and we can make no definite projections, certainly about the future. As far as the circuit breaker, we have budgeted this number at net of circuit breaker in anticipation of a circuit breaker reimbursement of 40%.
40%.
40%.
Thank you, Mrs. Wolf, and thank you to Sherborn Advisory, to the school committee, and to our Board of Selectmen. Good morning to all of you. I'm Steve Bliss. I'm the superintendent of schools. It's my pleasure to speak to your questions, Mr. Caruso. We enjoyed some savings this year and hopefully moving forward in the area of special education by introducing some programs that will meet students' needs in district as opposed to having to out-of-district place students. We hope to, moving forward, increase the number of programs we're offering in-house so as to meet students' needs, so that we don't incur those large expenses, number one, but actually even more importantly, so that we meet students' needs in the least restrictive environment in their own hometown of Sherborn, or in this case at the region. So those are programs we look to do. We have in fact realized savings for fiscal 15 in so doing. And moving forward, we're in the process of finalizing a complete reorganization of how special education is handled system-wide, that is to say across our 3 campuses and our 3 districts. So we hope in fiscal 16 to realize some increased program efficiencies in that way as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caruso.
Is there any other comment on that?
Peter Lifford on Doppingbrook Road. This may seem like a minor point, but best to write it at the beginning. There was reference made to OOD, and the superintendent very nicely didn't say OOD. He said out-of-district expenses. I would ask if whenever possible that we avoid acronyms so that those of us who may not be overly familiar with the acronyms understand what's going on.
Fair enough.
They tend to be exclusionary to those of us who are not intimately into the forest.
Right.
Thank you.
Certainly no intention in that way, and we'll be careful about that.
I
Thank you.
second the motion.
Thank you, Elliot. All right, so no further public comment, and is there any comment on that by advisory? The next hold is on Dover-Sherborn Regional Assessment.
Shouldn't we vote that? Shouldn't we vote that?
Well, I guess we can. I was thinking of waiting till the end, but, okay. So I will take a motion then.
Point of order.
Yes.
We didn't vote payroll, police payroll.
We
For
did-
expedition, might I suggest that,
Police payroll.
since I think most of
Oh, right,
these
okay,
holds
yeah.
are for discussion, that maybe we do proceed, and if
Then-
one results in a change, we can vote that individually, but otherwise vote the others as a group.
Right. That was my sort of original intention there, so, okay. So, line 301.
Yes, I held that. Specifically to speak to the region's treatment or lack of providing for other post-employment benefits, i.e. Retiree health care, future retiree health care liability, which I don't know the number, it's somewhere in the order of magnitude at the region of $15 million. Our share is of that nut is, nearly half. And I understand that there's no provision for funding that being done at the region, and therefore it's not included in the assessment to the town and so forth. And I just wonder if somebody could speak to that strategy, why we're letting that liability grow as opposed to trying to deal with it.
Is there someone from the regional schools who would like to speak to that? Mr. Richard Robinson is here this morning. He is the chair of the regional school committee.
Hey, Richard Robinson, 117 Mill Street. Peter, I don't have a deep philosophical problem with funding it. We've been advised over the years by our auditors that there are some problems in setting up such a fund because money will go in, can't come back out, should be needed to. It's a question we grapple with and that we so far have kept coming down on the side of not this year. I don't, unfortunately, have a glowing rosy future for how to cope with that problem. But that's where we are, and as I say from time to time in these meetings, we love it when people come to meetings and raise issues, and it's a valuable one to raise, and I'm sure we'll be seeing it on our agenda again this coming year.
Thank you.
I have a quick question. Do you know what the actual retirement cost is this year?
I don't personally. Let's see if the experts do.
That's a trick question. No, it's not really a trick question. What it is they have retirement costs that they're reflected in their budget for their the non-teachers. The teachers are funded at the region. It's about $3.2 million is funded by the state on behalf of the region's teachers, and for Pine Hill, just FYI, it's over $1 million. But that's that's not included in what we're appropriating here today. But I think their expense, like the Sherborns, is in the $500,000 range for everybody else that's not a teacher.
What I'm asking is what is the current payment for the current payment for OPEBs, if you will?
I can just roughly give you that because I've studied it. Like the town, approximately 25 to 30% of the health benefit costs that are paid on behalf of folks who've retired. So that portion of the current cost is for people who no longer work for us.
Yeah, no, I understand. Just asking what the numbers.
There you go.
So I did look at the
Introduce yourself.
Michael Lee, 28 Wildwood Regional School Committee. I did look at our, I think it was July 2013 actuarial report. Buried down in there, they have projections for pay-as-you-go. So for FY14, that projection was, the Sherborn share was $302,000, and for FY15, $317,000. But that's a projection from the report, and clearly Chris would ultimately be the source of what portion of our annual health care insurance pays to support people who are in a retired status versus an active status.
So it approximates 300,000.
Around 300,000 and growing.
Any other comment or questions on that?
Yeah, Doug Kingsley, 138 Farm Road. Question on line 301. Am I reading this right? Does this mean that the town's share of the regional education expenses increased 7.9%?
If that is what
Line
the
301.
increase, if that is what those numbers say, I have the numbers.
Just reading the far right column, says 7.
5.1. 5.1 in total to include the debt and the benefits.
Okay. Can someone comment on what's driving the 5.1% growth in these expenses?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Can someone comment on what's driving the growth in these expenses above the rate of inflation?
Okay, would someone from the region care to comment on that? Richard?
Thank you very much, Steve Bliss, Superintendent. On the model that we're looking at here from Sherborn Advisory, the numbers that were actually put forward include the Dover-Sherborn Regional Share Assessment and the benefits figure, and you really need to consider the increase of 7.9% and the decrease of negative 5.8% to realize where the regional budget lands for fiscal 15 in terms of how we actually came to our numbers this year.
Any further? Oh, sorry.
I don't think that answered my question. That question said the numbers add up.
Well, I think
I mean,
maybe
that-
you're looking at the delta between the original and the change, as opposed to...
I'm just asking a simple question. What is driving the increased cost of the expense of the education in this town?
a number of things.
So
I mean,
can someone from the school committee or someone who's created this budget comment on it? That's my question.
I can give a rough assessment there. Education's expensive, there's no question about it. It gets more expensive every year.
Just introduce yourself first.
Richard Robinson, 117 Mill Street, Regional School Chair. It gets more expensive every year. The particular drivers are salaries and benefits, as they always are. I don't think there's much more to say. We don't have new programs this year that are driving this budget. We don't have new transportation costs that are driving this budget. They are largely salary, because that makes up 75% salary and benefits. That makes up 75% of our budget.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
So what has been the approximate growth in this line item on a percentage basis for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years? Does it grow 5% every year?
I don't have those numbers with me right now. And does the region have that with them today?
Okay, one last question. How can a citizen of the town get under the covers on these numbers? Like, what, is there a school committee meeting that I can attend?
There is a school committee meeting every month. It is a public meeting. It is typically held on a Tuesday. I think the region is the first Tuesday of the month. And those are all
Thank you.
public meetings. Huh? Sure. Ben?
Just to stick an oar in about the budget, I was going to speak to this a little bit later, but one of the things that has been persistently growing much faster than inflation are the cost of benefits, the health insurance and the pension. And, you know, we don't have any reason to know when that will end. The other driver for overall education would be special education costs. I'm going to make a comment about that a little later, but special education has been growing at an average of 10% per year for quite a long time.
Okay, moving on to line 635, Farm Pond expenses, $16,750.
Hi, Susan Tyler, 26 Weston Avenue. I was just wondering if someone could explain the increase in expenses by 24.6%. What exactly?
Let's see, is someone from Farm Pond here who would like to speak to that? I'm sorry, excuse me, Pat, what?
There's an increase in, I think it was for some capital repairs, and then just the regular increase that we would apply for the hourly rate increase that we do every year for lifeguards and the reservation manager. Just the expenses. It's just for repairs.
But wouldn't the hourly expenses for the lifeguards come under the payroll line and not under the?
No, that's what I just said. The increase in the expenses is for repairs down there. I think it was, I just can't remember which repairs they
Okay,
were.
because I know we did the ramp last year, and they just were at conservation looking for planting for this year.
The bathhouse roof is failing. The inside
was
is
last
pretty
year?
miserable.
Yeah, that was last year, though.
Can I also add that the advisory committee meeting minutes from March 5th reflect that the budget was increased by approximately $5,000 to accommodate the town's stormwater initiatives that are being done, and that was new and unexpected.
It's upkeep for what was done last year, stormwater management wise.
Okay.
It needs to be kept up every year to.
And so every year, we
clean
can anticipate that there's going to be another increase of approximately 20% for the upkeep of?
I think it will probably stay at this level.
Thank you.
Grace Shepherd, Rockwood Street. Is the amount of money taken in for Farm Pond stickers covering the cost of Farm Pond?
Yes,
Both
100%.
salaries, okay, and expenses. It's 100% covered.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's not a general fund.
Michael Lesser, 54 Forest Street. On behalf of the Conservation Commission, yes, as Barb said, they have to do some significant work to fix up some of the rain gardens and other things that were done in a year or two. It's probably not going to be at this magnitude going forward, is my sense of what they need to do now.
Okay. Line 171, conservation, conservation payroll, $46,526.
For those that forgot, Susan Tyler, 26 Western Avenue. I have a question on the payroll. I know this is something that has been coming up every year. I know this was discussed at the Personnel Board and the Board of Selectmen on January 16th, and after that it became before the advisory. The payroll increase is includes an addition to the COLA for the conservation agent, and if you look over the past history, there's already been a 6.5% increase above COLA since 2010. And I know advisory, personnel board, and the Board of Selectmen have all asked, when is this going to end? And since January 16th, there's been no answer to that. Thank you.
Michael Lesser, 54 Forest Street, Conservation Commissioner, Treasurer. There has been an answer to that repeatedly. It has been in several memos every year. We send a memo, the plan ends in about fiscal year 18, a 6.4% increase over COLA is part of an attempt to the fact that the salary for this person, staff member that we're very happy with, started out at 10% below the approved level for that, and we're trying to move towards the approved level for that salary. And therefore, there's that extra little 4% that'll come up over the next few years. And so there's always been very clearly marked a endpoint. It's only a matter of how fast we get there. Thank you.
I just want to state that in May of 2008, the agent at that time was making $20 an hour. On October 28th, when the current agent was hired, she was hired at $22.50 an hour. And in September, a month before she was hired, it stated that the ceiling rate was $25.52. It didn't say that that was the max that you're going to give the agent, and we're going to get you to that point. That was a ceiling rate. There is a range of salary, and there was no hiring agreement that we will get you to that ceiling rate. Thank you.
Mary, the Board of Selectmen have supported this budget and the current treatment, as well as the treatment that's been done in the last few years. Certainly, what happens in the future is still up for discussion, but the numbers we're looking at, we're in support of this.
I think that advisory would like to make sure that this issue sort of goes away before next year.
Yeah, I guess Michael Lesser, 54 Forest Street. Right, there's no promise of getting towards that approved level. If I misspoke about that, it's more a matter of what's reasonable to maintain our staff members that we're quite happy with, and that there is a level that we can move towards. There's never a promise.
Grace Shepherd, Rockwood Street. I don't want to speak directly to it, somewhat tangentially. there is a procedure for determining salaries, and it would probably be very helpful if personnel did another review. There hasn't been one done in a long time, I think. If you get comparable salaries from other communities, it has always been Sherborn's policy to try to be fair in its salaries. And if the pay for comparable people in other salaries has gone up a lot, because the market does that sometimes, that's one thing. And if it hasn't, that's another. So why not settle it by getting some real data?
And we've talked about doing that and hope that that will happen sooner rather than later. Okay, and the final hold that we have is on other post-employment benefits, and that is $100,000.
Yes, and I appreciate that, once again, we're seeing this as an appropriation item, and the amount is meaningful. It isn't the amount that the recent actuarial valuation says is the amount that you should put away to make the liability go away. The town has roughly a $10 million liability on this particular item. To fund it is in the amount of about $200,000. I'm looking over at the treasurer there. So I'd just like to hear your rationale for why you're not going to that sort of funding level. I know later in the warrant, towards the end, we'll be dealing with what happens with funding and so forth, where the money goes. But on this, we're roughly half of what just the Sherborn share of the cost is, and excluding anything from the region, as we talked about earlier. So if you could just speak to that, please.
Right. We will be, there is a later article here where we're advocating putting another $200,000 to this, to make a total contribution this year of $300,000. And that also will, in prior years, this $100,000, and in fact, all of the OPEB money has gone into the OPEB stabilization fund, and this year we will be voting on adding OPEB funding to the OPEB trust. So it won't be $100,000, assuming that there is a favorable vote on that, it will be $300,000.
I'd like to, if I could just clarify, that would be a transfer.
Yes,
it's not an additional
contribution.
contribution.
Right,
It's money that was already set aside for OPEBs, but we'll move it into the trust, which would get us better auditing and accounting treatment.
Thank you. I just want to put that out there. Appreciate it.
We're very cognizant of the
I know you are.
post-employment benefit situation. Okay, so I guess if there is no further comment on the other article, the other line items on Article 3, I will read the held items and then take a motion for favorable recommendation on those line items. Police payroll, line 210, $1,332,709. Sherborn Schools out-of-district expenses, $979,425. Dover Sherborn Regional Assessment, $8,276,597. Farm Pond expenses, $16,750. Conservation payroll, $46,526. And other post-employment benefit funding, $100,000. I will take a motion to approve those numbers for Article 3.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion up here on that? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, so motion carries unanimously by all those present. Yes. I just would like to take a moment here to, Article 3 deals with the major funding of the budget here. It deals with the omnibus budget, and we're concluding with that now. And there are a number of articles that follow that do have financial implications for the town. For the most part, they do not address the town's operating budget directly. So before we move on, I'd like to invite advisory co-chair Ben Williams, who has acted as liaison to the town's fiscal management team. That would be the accountant, the assessors, the tax collector, and the treasurer, and who has also served as advisory's representative to the capital budget committee to say a few words about the town's fiscal situation, where we are now, where we are headed, and what we have to watch for along the way. Ben?
That was a much more elaborate introduction than I expected. We've had some good discipline on developing the budget in the past 3 years, and I'd like to give special thanks and recognize former advisory chair, Mark Brandon, for having the foresight in setting that path at the time when the town needed that kind of guidance. There were some innovations this year. The first one is that the town administrator had responsibility for coordinating the Board of Selectmen budgets. That allowed him to make trade-offs between the different needs of the different departments while still providing transparency to advisory and to the public. This year, we came up with a concept of a guidance reserve, which was instrumental in avoiding the use of free cash to fill gaps in the operating budget. As a result, we are in an unusually good free cash position this year, and we'll be recommending later that, consistent with advisory policy on our reserves, we can use that free cash for capital expenses. That will have the result that we don't have to add as much to the town's debt and tax bills. So what happened this year? In 3 words, we got lucky. The special education and out-of-district expenses declined dramatically. And that's the first time I can remember, having studied the numbers historically. There might have been some years when we had very low growth or maybe no change, but this is the first time I know of that we had a decline. And that totaled $547,000 of actual decline in those expenses. The regional school district, the assessment was up over guidance, but it should be noted that they absorbed some of those out-of-district costs by inclusion, as the superintendent explained. We also had an overlay release. I can explain that if somebody cares, but it takes a while, and it's not that entertaining once it's finished. But this is something that the assessors do. It's money that was set aside in case we had to give some tax rebates. They have now concluded that that's not necessary. So that's $131,000 that we're able to apply to our supplemental budget items that we'll get to a little bit later. However, those are the good things. As I mentioned, the special education and out-of-district drop is probably non-recurring, and those expenses may revert to their long-term averages, which are about 10% a year. They, by themselves, represent about 10%, almost 10% of the town's budget. So if even a small slice of your budget is growing rapidly, it's going to put pressure on all of your other expenses, or on your ability to cover your other expenses. It also should be noted that out-of-district can jump without warning by a very large amount. Benefits, the health insurance and pensions for our employees continues to rise at an alarming rate. This year it was about 8% on the town side and 13% at the regional schools. And benefits are over 15% of the town's total spending. So continued huge increases there will have exactly the same effect of pressuring our ability to provide good services or to stick within the Prop 2.5 limits on tax increases. And as Chairman Caruso pointed out, this does not include increased OPEB funding, either up to the level that has been recommended to us by the actuaries, both for the town and at the regional schools. I mentioned the overlay releases. For 2 years, we've had unusually large overlay releases. We're certainly happy about them, but they're unusual to be that large. The result is that we're not facing anything like a crisis this year. If you'd been to these meetings 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, it sort of felt like a crisis. It's much more pleasant to be working on the budget this year. I think that because of the innovations that we've made and so forth, we look like a better managed town because we're not in crisis. But we still have very high tax bills, and we still have very high tax rates. And I personally worry that that could well make Sherborn less attractive as a place to move to and to stay in. And we want to do what we can to try to ameliorate that situation of high taxes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to Article 4. Just to see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money, and if so, what sum, to fund cost items included in collective bargaining agreements executed by the town, or take any other action related thereto. This is basically a boilerplate article to fund any collective bargaining agreements that are resolved prior to town meeting, according to Massachusetts law. Cost items include such things as salary, longevity, uniform allowance, and so forth. I've been in touch with Town Council, Barbara St. Andre, and as she has not yet reviewed the recently negotiated contracts, I want to deal with this by basically recommending no action, but of course, if someone has some public comment to that end, please feel free. Okay. Is there, then I will make that motion at this time to recommend no action on this Article 4. And do I?
To seek a motion or make the motion?
To seek a motion.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Is there a possibility that there will be a collective bargaining agreement executed between now and town meeting?
Well, CM&D, I believe is, David, would that be correct? That CM&D has been executed but not reviewed?
It's not executed, it's
not
being
executed.
bargained.
Okay, it is being bargained. And the school teacher contract has been executed but not reviewed, I believe. And the ancillary contracts for the schools are in negotiation. So
I guess my question is simply, if in fact they are executed prior to town meeting, if we vote no action on this, will we not have defeated the purpose?
well, we could change our recommendation if that becomes.
Well, I guess what I'm saying,
necessary.
the wording of the warrant suggests that we recommend favorable action on any contract that's executed. So it would seem to me we can vote favorable action. If none are executed, it doesn't matter, obviously, and if it's executed, we've already agreed to it. So as a boilerplate matter, I think procedurally, we're probably better off just approving it, or voting favorable action.
Are you familiar, David, with how these are handled typically? We've been voting no action for the last couple of years, but I guess that maybe that's...
Right. I mean, when you issue your advisory report, maybe you could have more details there about what's going to the voters, but if you recommend approval of the article, that's not approving each individual contract.
Okay. Corey?
Corey Lincoln, 10 Great Rock Road, also the town moderator. In recent years, when this article has come up, it has been the opinion of Labor Council and not objected to by Town Council that this is really not a necessary article, that in fact any contract settlement salary is embedded in the numbers in the budget, and that by approving that particular salary line, it's an implicit approval, and that this is actually sort of just adding another layer on, and that it is also not really a vehicle for the town to say, for voters to say yay or nay to the conditions of the contract. So pretty much it's ordinarily voted no action.
Can I comment on that?
Sure, Paul.
In future, then, I think we should just not have it in the warrant.
Paul?
The purpose of the article is to give transparency and to allow the voters a chance to look at collective bargaining agreements. What's typically done in most towns is that newly signed collective bargaining agreements are made available to the public. The law says that the cost items in the first year of a multi-year contract need to be voted by town meeting. We have done that often by putting it in the omnibus budget. But by having a particular article, it does focus the voters' attention on the cost items that are being agreed to for the different unions. And if it's done right, it's a great opportunity for the public to give feedback to the town as to where the town is on things like cost increases, benefits, all of those things. The town can vote no. And if they vote no, the collective bargaining agreement is returned to the bargaining table to be renegotiated. So contracts are not final until town meeting votes the first year of that contract.
So your recommendation then would be what for the motion? To recommend favorable or unfavorable action on this?
Well, what we've been doing is voting no action,
action, right.
because we don't have a contract to be reviewed. The purpose of the article is for you to look at the contract and tell us, wow, this is too expensive, or wow, you should do more, or to get a chance for us to get more participation.
Okay, but we have not seen the contracts.
That's because they're still being negotiated.
As far as I know, the school numbers are not changing from what's included in your budget, so it's not that it would be a different number. And we would hope the same would be for the CM&D negotiations, that there would be no dollar change from what's already included in the budget.
Okay. Richard?
Richard Robinson, 117 Mill Street, Regional School Chair. Paul, I think I just heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that the contract does not attain force until town meeting says so. Is that a consequence of this article, or is that a consequence independent of this article because of state law?
State law.
So even without this article, the voters at town meeting would have the authority to veto any contract that had been entered into up to that point, independent of their vote on Article 3 or because of their vote on Article 3?
Well, Article 3, what we've done in the past is we've included, the best practice is when you sign a new collective bargaining agreement, rather than bury the numbers in a general line item for payroll, for example, put a footnote in Article 3 and say that the cost items for the new collective bargaining agreement for the XYZ union in year one is $30,000 of that number. Then if someone wants to say, why did we give a 10% raise, or why did we give no raise, the issue comes before town meeting. It's harder in Article 3 because it's a very complicated article. There's lots of line items and everything else. That's why it is fairly customary in Massachusetts to have this boilerplate article so that it's highlighted for the voters. Collective bargaining agreements are important things, and they're multi-year. So if you have the funds in year one and you sign a contract, you're actually locking the community into multi-years. So many towns and town leaders and in other communities like to make sure that a multi-year commitment gets at least some attention and some discussion at town meeting.
Can I follow up with one comment? And I would say that I'm strongly in favor of public participation, and even in general like the idea of saying this is how much your new contract costs. However, that's what public meetings that long precede town meeting are for. That's what our budget hearing is for. We had no one at our budget hearing. So,
Hi, Mary. Claire Graham, 208 South Main Street. I just chaired the recent negotiation for the teachers or educators contract, and for those who have not seen it, it is on the school's website under the publications, and there's a press release synopsis that we'll post there as well, for those who haven't seen it.
Thank you for that information.
Does this mean if we voted no, if the town voted no, that the negotiations would be reopened?
Yes.
So then we'd better make a favorable recommendation unless we want that to happen? Is that what you're saying? I am quite unclear at this point what we are voting for or not voting for, depending on how the motion is phrased.
What I believe the town administrator just reported was that you've already included the funding for the contracts in the budget, in Article 3. So you're voting the funding for these contracts. So you're voting implicit approval. I hope in your report on Article 3 you will footnote and say for the payroll for CM&D, for example, includes $30,600 and whatever dollars for the first year of a new collective bargaining agreement, just for clarity's sake. Because again, state law says that you have to, for a multi-year contract, town meeting does need to appropriate the first year funding for that contract, unless the funding's already there in the budget.
So your recommendation is to call for a motion for
No action
No
at this
action.
point, because we
Okay.
don't, there's no contract work.
But we have just what Claire said, we have the first year of the educators agreement kicking in fiscal 15.
And so,
We did sign this past year the police contract, but that police contract was for this current fiscal year, a 3-year period starting this current fiscal year. So from my limited understanding, that doesn't apply to what Paul's describing, but my limited understanding would suggest that the educators agreement does, and we have yet to finalize, it's still in negotiation or being bargained, the CM&D contract. So if I were in your shoes, I'd follow Jeff's advice.
Jeff's advice has been withdrawn based on Corlinda's input. I think Corlinda's absolutely right, that this is an unnecessary article because the funds are included in the budget. Paul's notion for public openness is fair and reasonable, but I'm persuaded by Richard that the process for the public to be intimately involved in what we're doing is to attend those budget meetings and to look at the budget per this year, which includes those numbers. And it seems to me that's the most effective way to accomplish both the goal of getting the approvals we need and also to have public participation.
I'd also add to that, how can we have two articles that can be potentially at cross purposes? I mean, if we approve something in Article 3, how can we have an article right after it that can dash that by a no action vote by the town?
I actually have a question that I think may answer the question at the same time. My interpretation of this article was that Article 3 has included in it the contracts we've negotiated. My interpretation of Article 4, and those budgets also include, for contracts that aren't negotiated, some sort of estimate of where they think the contract negotiations will come out. My interpretation of Article 4 was it gave the negotiating parties representing the town enough wiggle room so they could commit to those contracts as they felt was in the best interest of the town, and it may be more or less than what's in the budget. But this was, my interpretation was that this was for contracts that were not yet negotiated but would affect the 2015 budget. So that's why I think you have, my interpretation is why you may have two articles is to cover that eventuality. And I agree that the language in Article 4 doesn't say that specifically, but that seems to make sense to me. So it's,
But I'd have concern on that score approving or recommending action on contracts we haven't had an opportunity to look at. If we were going to do kind of a favorable action, preemptive vote.
Just one second, Elliot. It just, you know, I feel like we're sort of between a rock and a hard place here. If we vote no action, I want to be sure we don't throw all the contracts back into negotiation. If we vote positive action, I don't want to write a blank check here.
I
So-
can put my lawyer's hat on and tell you that if you funded it in Article 3, then a no-action vote in Article 4 will not defund them because you funded them.
Okay.
And that's what the law requires. As far as voting approval, let's say, of the CM&D contract with a favorable motion, well, I and the board hasn't voted approval of it either yet. And we're not ready yet because that's still under negotiation. So I wouldn't recommend that you approve a contract that may not be finalized.
Okay. Thank you. Elliot?
I think he's just answered my comment. I'm as confused as the rest of you on this. I think you should just say, recommend favorable action with the understanding that town meeting, the night of town meeting, will have the final say on this. So you can just recommend favorable action, and if something comes up between now and town meeting, then town meeting can change it or amend it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Elliot. So, if there is no more comment, I will ask for a motion to recommend no action on this item.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? That is unanimous by all those present. Thank you. All right. Article 5, to see if the town will vote to transfer from available funds a sum of money, and if so, what sum, for the purpose of supplementing the various line items of the town's fiscal year 2014 budget, previously voted by the town under Article 3 of the warrant for the 2013 annual town meeting, or take any other action related thereto. The items to be voted on are as follows. Again, as in Article 3, please call out a hold if there is something you wish to discuss. For police overtime, $40,000. For police expenses, $5,000. For snow and ice payroll, $40,000. For snow and ice expenses, $150,000. For legal, $25,000. For fire department ladder repair, $21,725. For libraries, upgrading of computers and network configurations for Windows 7, $3,170. For the town treasurer payroll, expenses incurred in the process of transitioning from one employee who is retiring and bringing on a new employee, $4,161. For the town clerk to replace the fireproof lateral file, $3,540. And for town computers, for an upgrade due to Windows XP no longer being supported by Microsoft, $11,230. And for the assessor's payroll, to cover a person retiring who is owed vacation, $2,000.
Hold on legal.
I wish that people had spoken up when the item was read. All right, we have a hold on legal and we have a hold on town computers. So is there a discussion on the items that are not currently held?
Madam Chair, do you have a total of the supplementals on your sheet?
On this, yes, we have
305.
305,
826.
826, right?
Thank you.
And the overlay release will be being used to take care of some of that. Okay, is there a discussion on the non-held items? All right, then I will take a motion to recommend favorable action on the non-held items of supplemental funding.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? It is unanimous by all those present. Okay, the legal budget, that would, $25,000.
Peter Lifford on Doppingbrook Road. First, let me explain, you were looking and reading from a list that I couldn't see, and so it went by kind of quickly. I would have put a hold on faster on legal. And frankly, my only comment on legal is, in my recollection, this is one of the smallest supplemental supplements to the legal line in quite a while, and I think it should be applauded, and I'm thrilled to see it, and I hope it continues. Thank you.
Okay, and the other hold, I believe, was on the town computers, $11,230.
Hi, Susan Tyler, Weston Ave. I'm just trying to understand, the library has an upgrade of computers and Windows 7, and yet the town, for basically $3,200, the town computers says they're upgrading due to XP. Are we upgrading the whole computer, or are we just upgrading the software?
This is for hardware. These are for computers.
Okay, so it's computers and, because this, the way it reads here, it
Yeah,
just
well,
looks like
there's
it's just the
computers,
program.
there is software upgrades, there's some memory upgrades, and there is some work being done to the server. So.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on that? Okay, then I will take a motion to approve supplemental funding of $25,000 for legal expenses and for $11,230 for, I'll call it technology expenses.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Motion passes unanimously by all those present. All right, I'm going to call about a 5-minute break here. I think there are a number of people who might appreciate that, and so we'll see you back here just before 10:15. Thank you. Start.
Oh, the other one.
Just waiting on one, okay, we have it here. All right, welcome back. Moving on now to Article 6. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds or borrow a sum of money, and if so, what sum, for highway improvements under the authority of Chapter 90 of the general laws, as funded by various state budgets, authorize the selectmen to apply for, accept, and expend and borrow in anticipation of state aid for such projects or take any other action related thereto. Is there discussion on this article from the public? Any comments? Okay. Any original comments from advisory on this? Okay, then. I'm sorry, Grace.
I'm sorry, I just wanted to ask a question. In the CM&D budget, is there any money other than this Chapter 90 money for maintaining and supporting the town roads?
Well, there is certainly, there is expense money and payroll money. I mean, that's what they do.
But particularly for road construction, is there any other monies?
Oh, for construction?
No, that Chapter 90 is for constructing roads
Okay,
or repairing, repairing
Well, okay,
roads.
so repairing, there is.
Well, there is, I'm sorry, I don't have my TA here, the CM&D
Yeah,
director, but we do have road materials in there. There's, they do some things, curbs and so forth.
Yeah,
But Chapter 90 funds are definitely the largest part of how the road surfaces get repaired.
Okay.
We have paint for lines and all that kind of stuff built in.
But
Not significant compared to the Chapter 90 funds.
And so if a road needed to be redone, there's not that
We
comes
really look
along
for the Chapter 90, and we do we do prioritize which roads and sidewalks, to the extent we deal with those, are up for. So there's the CM&D director. If you want more question, I'm sure he can give you better detail.
Elliot?
Yeah. My understanding of this Chapter 90 is we vote to accept any funds that the state wants to give us.
That's correct.
So how can we say no?
Right.
Do you want to report on where we are in Chapter 90?
Sure, if it's brief.
This year, the legislature appropriated $300 million because Deval Patrick was uncertain about funding needed for overall transportation. He has released $200 million of that $300 million authorization. We are hoping, as this fiscal year draws to a close, as he sees the strength of the recovery here in Massachusetts, he will release another $100 million. That's for the current fiscal year. Next year, the legislature has already put into the bond bill $300 million for going forward for 2015 and later years. So there should be a 50% increase in funding the Chapter 90 level for next fiscal year.
Okay, and what's typical for Sherborn to get approximately?
Right now, we're about 250, and the increase for next year should be about 375, a little under 400,000.
Great, thank you, Paul. All right, so I will take a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 6.
I so move.
Second?
Second.
All right. All in favor? That is unanimous by all present. Article 7, to see if the town will vote to authorize or reauthorize, as the case may be, the use of revolving funds containing receipts from the fees charged to users of the services provided by the various boards, departments, or offices of the town pursuant to Chapter 44, Section 53, E and a half, is that, or E1/2 of the general?
E and a half.
Okay, of the general laws or take any other action related thereto. This article enables the use of revolving funds for cemeteries, farm pond, elder housing, the ones that we have in the town. So is there any comment or question from the audience?
So what you're ultimately approving, this is a general thing, but the amount is what's specified and used in this model, correct, that the town accountants prepared? So you're talking $523,000
Yes.
roughly.
Yes.
Yeah, the motion has to specify the annual spending limit.
Okay, so the 523 is the limit.
Has to
All right.
specify by account.
It's by account.
By account, okay. So,
I get to share a microphone with you.
that would be for,
For the home players, it's on the second sheet of the financial handout. RFA is about two-thirds of the way down the sheet.
and that would be for farm pond, I'm sorry?
It's on your article, under Article 6, and on the article sheet, there was a list. The last page.
On the last page. Very last page.
So it's really Article 7, isn't it?
It's identified as Article 6, but it's Article 7. The article numbers are wrong.
Oh, okay, all right. So for the Council on Aging, that would be $30,000. For the Board of Health, for their flu clinic, $5,000.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
Can I
that's
interrupt?
not- that
I'm
doesn't include
confused.
farm
Well, I thought we were
pond.
talking
Wait.
$500,000.
I'm sorry.
Confused.
I'm sorry, this is for the, specifically for revolving funds under this chapter 43, or whatever. The reserve for appropriations is completely separate. This has nothing to do with that. These are articles where you're voting to allow a certain amount of money to come in for departmental revenue to be spent on that program. This has nothing to do with reserve for appropriations. It's a separate thing. So the Council on Aging, you are allowing $30,000 to be received to pay for their programs, up to $30,000 to come in and the program to be spent. Board of Health is $5,000, recycling is $2,000 for the sale of bins, and town forest for the sale of firewood is $5,000. The way it was voted last year is exactly the same. It should have been in the warrant, but I didn't see the warrant until just now,
So those numbers that Ruth just did, Council on Aging, $30,000, Board of Health, $5,000, recycling, $2,000, and town forest, $5,000.
Madam Chair, question, what happens with farm pond fees and conservation commission fees and other revolving
Well, that's what,
type accounts?
to be honest with you, I thought that's what this was addressing, and that it enabled those entities to take in funds and then dispense them.
It sounds like not, so I guess I'm just wondering where that comes in.
Those aren't.
Yeah, I'm wondering now.
Those do not get treated as revolving funds?
No, they're reserved for appropriation funds.
Okay, so they're their budget numbers.
They're annually appropriated.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right. So with those numbers, I will take a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 7. Second?
Second.
All in favor? Unanimous by all those present. Okay. Article 8. These are the capital items. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute a sum of money, and if so, what sum, for the purpose of capital expenditures for the offices, departments, boards, and commissions of the town of Sherborn, and to determine if any amount borrowed under this article shall be contingent upon the passage of a ballot question exempting the amounts required to to pay for the bonds from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, or to take any action thereto. And we'll be going through these individually. I have been told that we do not need to specify the method of funding here right now. We are approving the amounts, and we will we are looking at funding some of these, I will tell you, by what we've been referring to as our guidance reserve, but if we didn't use it for that, it would fall out to free cash. And so we're basically looking to fund some of these with free cash. So we'll be dealing with that aspect of things later, and we're just talking about the amounts themselves right now. So, with no further delay, I'll take these also in the order in which they appear here. Number one is a request by the fire department to replace the current ladder truck, and the request is in the amount of $900,000. So I would ask the proponent of that article.
We have a little technical difficulty.
Okay.
I'm going to blame the fire chief. It's coming up. It's coming up. But you got the gun.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Are we good on that?
I think that's fire trucks.
Yeah. There we go. Hey, sweet.
I'm Tim Morrissey, the fire chief for the town of Sherborn. Good morning to everyone.
Hey, Tim.
Oh.
Yeah, you gotta sit down.
Tough crowd.
I wanted to get that ladder fixed.
I'll make this short and sweet to get through my 5 minutes and everything. The fire protection delivery model that we have here in Sherborn, we require specialized fire equipment. Big reason being that we don't have a municipal water source here in town. We have to bring all of our water to fire scenes, and that includes the use of the dry hydrants that you've seen throughout the town and the tanker that we do have. Requires our trucks to have large water tanks so our fire suppression efforts can continue without water source interruptions, and then we can get it established using the dry hydrants. In Sherborn, we require larger fire pumps and piping to move the high volume of water, especially because our reel truck with the long 6-inch of hose, it takes quite a while to move that water, and you need a good pump to do that. We are a call department. I'm the only full-time person, so we do have staffing challenges. Depending on day or night, we don't know necessarily who is going to be showing up for calls. Most of our surrounding fire departments don't have the same specialized equipment we do because they're municipal departments such as Natick and Framingham and Ashland, and they have a municipal water source. These are our current structural pieces. Engine 1 up to the left, the reel truck is the second, the tanker the third, and then our engine 4 down below. Those are our 4 pieces that we use regularly for all our structure fire calls. So what does it do? What does engine 1 do? You can see it operating at a chimney fire. It's our primary attack engine. It can do search and rescue operations, fire suppression, be utilized in ventilation with the equipment that it carries. And again, it has unique capabilities. It's an aerial device. It's a pumper. It carries specific equipment, breathing apparatus and hose. It responds to most of our fire calls here in the town of Sherborn. Alarm activations, gas leaks, of course the chimney fires that you see, and of course structural fires. So why do we need to replace it now? Well, its condition is starting to deteriorate and it's becoming unreliable. It has a serviceability issue and an increased cost in maintenance, for which you saw today that $22,000 had to be supplementally allocated for repair of the aerial, which is currently out of service. There was one part available in the nation that we were fortunate enough to get, and it is going to be delivered next week, so that the aerial will be replaced and fixed. and put back into service. We also look at the potential for an ISO rate impact on the community with a smaller truck. It's a part of a capital plan. It's been on the list for 5 years. This isn't something that just crept up on us. It's been spaced out, and previous chief, Neil McPherson, had put together a very well capital plan that had been spaced for our fire trucks. Obviously, in any purchase, capital purchase these days, we're all aware that delaying a purchase will result in an increased cost both to build and to finance such piece. What are we going to replace it with? Well, it's called a quint. It's the term that came into being about 20, 25 years ago. That means it's a vehicle that has an aerial device, carries water, has hose supplies on it, and has our equipment. 750 gallons of water we're looking at. It'll also have a compressed air foam system. We already have one on engine 4. It'll have an aerial on it. It's somewhere, depending on the manufacturer that you end up doing business with, it's somewhere in the mid-70s to nearly 80. Again, we go back to the pump. Why we need a strong pump? We have to move a lot of water, so 1,500 to 2,000 gallons. Full complement of ground ladders, full complement of firefighting equipment. It's adapted for how we do business here in Sherborn, how our strategy and tactics, and again, our use of manpower. Why should we purchase a new vehicle? Well, it's a cost-effective option when you consider that the life of the new vehicle is over 20 to 25 years, and what it breaks down to for a yearly cost. Most used vehicles don't meet our needs. We've gone through in depth and looking at websites and other places for used vehicles. They either have 2 of the water, they have small pumps without the large discharges to work with our 5-inch hose. The technology for the foam system is outdated. The old foam system was very unreliable. It gunked up constantly. It was very difficult to use. Also, the size of the truck. One truck, depending on what you find, it may not actually fit in our fire station.
That's 5 minutes, Chief.
That's 5 minutes? Very good.
Sorry.
I thought it was 1 minute to set up.
No, I don't think you timed that, did you? His setup?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, all right. Take.
We didn't time the setup.
Okay, okay, all right.
All right. Lastly, the approximate cost is $880,000. That's a number. It has not gone out to bid. It has not been spec'd. Working with the state bid process and everything, we would be looking to get something lower than that. The problem is we have to go out to RFP and the bids process. It could be financed. There are ways that can be done. We've had a history of getting the best value for the town at the best price, using sanitized specifications through a committee with both the advisory and capital as well as the town administration. There are processes through the state in which they do already put out the bid, and that is where we would be initially looking for, is through the MPAC. And with the town manager, we'll use him.
Thank you very much, Tim. All right, I'll open the floor to, yeah, I'll get that. I'll open the floor to public comment, and I would actually like to call Bob Searle, who is the Chair of Capital Budget, to speak first about this.
Good morning, Bob Searle, 32 Old Orchard Road, and Chairman of the Capital Budget Committee. On this particular item, we've had a lot of back and forth and worked extensively with the fire chief and his staff on this. And I think in general, we believe, just to go through the basics, we believe, first of all, the town needs a ladder truck. Well, we believe this ladder truck needs to be replaced. Those may sound like sort of basic things, but we actually spent some time trying to figure that piece of it out. I think how we go about getting a new truck, the process that the fire chief outlined is something that we would endorse. We would like to set a maximum amount to spend up to, and unfortunately at this point we don't exactly know what that should be. We're waiting for the new state bids for the, I'm not sure exactly how to say it, but the Metropolitan Area Planning Council puts together a state contract. The current prices we have are from 2011. The new prices for 2014 are supposed to be out by the middle of April. Ideally, we would have that information and be able to set a ceiling that would allow us to get what we really need, but really keep the cost as low as possible. And we think we ought to be having to make some trade-offs here on this. We agree with the selection task force that would include the town administrator, a representative from advisory, a representative from capital budget, as well as the fire chief. And that the process, and we would try to purchase through this contract unless we could get a better deal. Specifically, if we get a better deal going outside the contract, then we would do that, but otherwise we would purchase through that contract.
And the number, Bob, do you have, do you
No,
want to make?
as I said, our current hypothesis is that the number should be lower than 900,000.
Okay.
But given the fact that the new contract, the new pricing hasn't come out yet, I think we have some internal discussions about, we've had internal discussions
Right.
about what the number should be. I think there's some disagreement, frankly, on that, and we want to get that data before we make any kind of recommendation.
Okay. Other public comment? John?
Jonathan Dowse, 100 North Main Street, Deputy Fire Chief. I just want people to know that we've been talking about this for quite a few years. It's been on the capital budget plan for quite a while. We've taken a lot of time, done a lot of research. As we look at this truck, our concerns as a fire department is carrying as much water as possible, being able to get in the majority of the driveways. There's going to be driveways we just can't get in, and being able to fit into the station. That's some of the factors that we've used as we look around, and we're exploring all the different manufacturers, trying to find the best piece of equipment for the town of Sherborn. We need to remember we need to be buying a truck that's going to last us 20 years. So we want to be looking at some of the newer technology out there, because I don't want to buy a truck to fight yesterday's fire when I have to look at what we're going to be fighting tomorrow. So I hope you support this. Thank you.
And John? Bob?
I have two questions. One of the fire chief.
Bob, introduce
Oh,
yourself,
excuse me,
please.
Bob Delaney, 46 Pleasant Street. The comment that was just made about some driveways being, that the trucks can't get in there, do the owners of these driveways understand that they're at risk, that the proper equipment cannot be accessed to their house should there be a fire? And if not, why not? They should be, so that they understand the risk. And my second question is to the Board of Selectmen. Have you voted whether or not to support this? I haven't heard that.
You want me to answer that question?
Yeah.
Please.
Yes, no, we haven't voted to support this one yet. We've held taking a vote on that.
I consider that a major disappointment. The fire department is under the auspices of the Board of Selectmen. You control their budgets, presumably their capital in terms of your support. And I think that as leaders of the town, on such a major item, that you should have been prepared to answer whether or not you're going to support it for this meeting. And I find that very disappointing. And I think for future reference that the Board of Selectmen, especially in their own budgets, their own responsibilities, the fire department comes under the leadership of the Board of Selectmen, you should be the first ones out as to whether or not, you're leaders and you should lead.
Well, I understand that, and I can tell you that I was certainly looking for information that hadn't been forthcoming. This presentation was very helpful for me, and we, lacking information that we've been asking for some time, we were not prepared to do that. I polled briefly my colleagues here. I'm not sure, not all of us are quite ready to take that vote, but I can say I support the purchase personally, and just for informational purposes, but I respect my colleagues in terms of how they want to handle it at this stage of the game.
And I can say I support the purchase also, and also respect my colleagues.
Okay. Okay,
That's a vote.
It's almost a vote. It's close to a vote.
That's a public meeting.
As for the first question about the driveways and everything, and Chief Dowse and Chief McPherson can, in some respects, better answer that in the past, historically, if they've really come up against any properties where the engine or the tanker have not been able to get down those driveways. It's kind of a case-by-case situation. Of course, this winter, we also had quite a bit of snow and ice and everything, so driveways that we all could normally get down also run that risk, as we all well know, of now having narrower driveways, just like we had narrower roads. It's kind of still behooves the town resident to allow for proper access to it. It is something that going forward, we've been very adamant about with some of the new developments going into town, that they have wide enough entrances that will accommodate the 4 seasons so that we can get apparatus in.
Will you be notifying people who don't meet that criteria?
Yes, on a case-by-case basis,
Yeah.
most definitely.
Good, because, I mean, if it turns out they have a fire and the insurance coverage, if their driveway is insufficient, could be a problem.
Rather be proactive than reactive.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Bob.
The other thing, Bob, I'll just say, just for folks, yes, we're town leaders, and I believe I was elected to be one of your leaders, and I do what I think is right. One of the things I think is right is sometimes to be there's a word for it I won't use here, to ensure that I get information, that things are done the way I think they should be. So I have to stick to my guns on that. So just in my defense, I'll say that I have high expectations.
Neil?
Neil McPherson, Great Rock Road, Assistant Fire Chief. I want to just remind and re-emphasize a few points. Number one, this truck is a critical part of our overall ability to provide service to the town. It's a unique truck. It's one of our attack engines, all right? We have a system that we've been using for over 20 years that has worked very well in this community. If we don't replace this truck, and this truck is not reliable for us, then that system breaks down, all right? Point number one. Also, many years ago, when people look at $900,000, I'm a taxpayer. I don't want to spend and pay more taxes than I need to, but the town made a decision many years ago where we did not put in a municipal water source, all right? And we've saved because we didn't invest in infrastructure, and we don't pay personnel. But on the flip side, you end up buying more expensive trucks because they have to be unique in the sense that they carry more water in this situation. So again, these trucks are expensive. I want to point out on a relative basis, there are some ladder trucks that can cost up to $1.5 million. The truck that has been spec'd out, or that I shouldn't say spec'd out, that we have been looking at with generic specifications, all right, is again $800,000. We don't know until, in fact, we get the bids, but we think it's approximately that. And there's equipment that has to go on. Also want to just point out, this truck is unreliable. I've been one of the ones who recently drove it when the turntable broke. The time before that, the truck had electrical issues. It is unreliable.
So you
go back
broke
to
it,
the
Neil.
system. So I broke it and I take responsibility, but it goes to show you.
So we can take that 21 grand off of here, right?
Been operating for 15 years and had few issues, but it goes back to reliability. This is a critical truck for us and is becoming unreliable. So again, I would just ask for your vote so that we can continue to maintain the level of service that the town expects from us, and so that we can help certainly protect your personal possessions and yourself. Thank you.
Mary, do you have an idea what the capital cost, the annual cost to the taxpayers is likely
Yes,
to be
I
on
do.
average
We
for
do
this?
have, we had Pete break that down for us. Ben has it here.
At $900,000, the high end of what has been discussed, the average tax bill for the first 3 years would see about $69 to $70 based on current rates or anticipated rates and so forth. That's over a 15-year financing, so people can decide whether they think that's big or small, but
Right, thank you.
it does all add up.
15?
15 years of financing.
Hi, Susan Tyler, Western Avenue. I hope there is support for this. We just heard the fire chief state that we have a truck that is 20 years old. They were able to locate one part in the country for it. Now, what happens if we get that one part? We fix it, and tomorrow it breaks. Are we going to be able to find another part for the vehicle that is 20 years old? The other, I think I heard someone say that, well, we have trade-offs. If there's a fire in town, I don't want to be the one to say, oh, sorry, we had a trade-off. We're not going to be able to take care of your property. And there was one, oh, what's the lead time? What is the lead time for this new vehicle? If we appropriate the money to this year, how long is it going to take? Because meanwhile, we still have an old vehicle that has fallen apart.
I believe it's approximately 1 to 2 years average
1 to 2 years, so we have-
1,800 month, 1,800,
Okay, so we'll
18
be having
months.
1 to 2 years, hoping that if it breaks down again, we're going to be able to locate the parts for it. It's not acceptable.
Elliot Taylor again. We have volunteers for our fire department. And in order to get volunteers, we need to give them the best equipment. Otherwise, people will not volunteer, and then where will we be? This is a long-term investment, and I think we should get the best. They know what they need, the fire department, and I think we should give it to them. Also, I think maybe the planning board might put some specifications on driveway widths and whatever, on new equipment, on new construction. Thank you.
Mike?
There are planning board regulations that address driveways, and there are also subdivision regulations that address driveways, and those were developed in consultation with the fire chief approximately 20 years ago.
And properties that are older than that have, they're grandfathered in, I assume.
They would be.
Yeah.
Trucks are bigger now than they were 20 years ago.
Morning.
Not in our firehouse.
My name is Mike Guthrie, 29 Lake Street, and I'm speaking to support anything that the fire department says they need, in particular as it relates to time and rapid response, equipment starting on time. We had a fire at our house a few years back on the carport, and my son was inside asleep. There's a lot of luck in this story. Luck that, you know, a UPS driver on the street over responded, saw it, and came over, got him out of the house. That's the great news. And also, there's no question that time was huge in this, because we were told, Neil told us, another 3 or 4 minutes, house is gone. We don't want to think of everything else that could have happened that day. But whatever these guys want, I think you should support. It's truth. Thank you.
Any other public comment there? Okay, so I'm going to bring the discussion up here and open it to questions and comments by advisory. Lanny, I'll start with you.
Well, there was some comment at the capital budget meeting that a 500-gallon tank was more available and would lower the cost significantly. That 750-gallon tank is sort of a special made custom item. I'm just wondering whether a 500-gallon tank is just not practical, or whether there's any truth in what was said.
Further again, back to our way of no municipal water, and that we have to bring water and then otherwise draft from water. The other 250 gallons is important to us, and 750 gallons is as low as we'd want to go with this new apparatus.
Anyone else on advisory with any questions or comments? Jeff?
I'd make one comment. I think this is, to me, this is a pretty easy decision. It's a safety matter. The experts have said we need this truck, so I think it's really easy. In fact, based on what I heard, we should have made the decision 2 years ago. But leaving that aside, I would say, however, that if this was not a matter of safety, but more discretionary, I would be voting against it because the proponents do not endorse it. This is a Board of Selectmen item, and the Board of Selectmen do not support it. If it was not a matter of safety, I would vote against it for that reason.
Any other?
Taking a vote. You want to take a vote? You want to take a vote? We're ready to go? Well, they already voted. We just, while you were out, Paul, I expressed that I support this. Mike expressed that he supports it, but that we haven't taken a vote. We're not prepared to take a vote. I'll go with Spencer.
Pardon me? But that's fine. We're sorry to embarrass you, Paul. Hey, that's fine. We're giving you the opportunity now in our meeting. You have a jointly open meeting, and if you would like to take a vote now, we'd be delighted to hear you vote. because, yes, this has been a problem with our disposition of the article.
I'll take a
have the
motion to,
proponents, excuse me,
support the,
excuse me,
sorry.
to have, this has been a problem with our disposition of the article to have the proponents not have voted on it at this time.
I understand.
And like you, information has been coming in even this morning in terms of price changes and such, so we have not had the information until this time. I'm prepared to take a vote.
Yeah, so I'll take a motion to approve or support the purchase of this
Excuse
fire
me.
department. Can we do that? You asked me to do it?
Yes, they have.
Yeah, first thing.
Go ahead, Peter.
So can we do that?
Yes,
You know? Okay.
please
So
do that.
I'll take a motion to support the fire truck purchase.
Move to support the fire truck.
I'll second that. Any further discussion amongst ourselves? All in favor? There. We're a tough sell, what can I say? Tough sell.
Okay. So, according to our rules here, I need to open this again to any other public comments. Mark?
Mark Brandon, 16 Deerfield Road, and you know, having worked on this in the past, I don't think we can avoid this purchase, but I wonder, are we able, if we had a fire or an event at 10 o'clock in the morning, do we have enough staffing to staff all 4 trucks? And, you know, so is taking the longer term view, could we live with 3 trucks rather than 4 and avoid a purchase down the road?
Part of the reason for 4 trucks is the math of bringing the amount of water that the town of Sherborn has to bring for a fire. So that's where we've dealt with our strategy and tactics and made it into 4 trucks. As for the 10 a.m. thing, it's a funny thing about when there's a large incident in a community, that even in a call community where people are somewhere else doing their work or whatever, people come very quickly to the firehouse, and for a structure fire at 10 o'clock in the morning, we will have all 4 trucks on the road.
Bob?
Bob Searle, 32 Old Orchard Road. I just want to make sure that I was clear about where capital budget came out on this. We do support the article as long as we're explicit about the procurement process that we outlined.
Yes.
As it's currently just a line item, we would not support it.
Okay.
Can I just ask a quick question? Is there any plan in place if something happens to the ladder truck to use other towns, or is there kind of a...
If we were to totally lose the truck for operation for an extended period of time, we'd put out requests through the district, through the county, and even through the state to see if somebody had something in reserve that we could bring into town. But again, it has to, especially size-wise, is the number one thing, so that we'd have a place to store it safely.
Peter Lifford and Doppingbrook Road. This seems to be devolving to an opportunity for us all to learn a lot about firefighting in the town, and I did have a question to that regard. You talk about bringing sufficient water to the fire. However, the town has, really a tremendous dry hydrant program, and I gather this is the amount of water needed before you can actually get a dry hydrant running. Is that true?
Correct. Yeah, obviously, it takes time to hook up to the hydrant, bring in the water, and then you got to get the water from the hydrant up the street to where the fire is to the next fire truck. So,
Okay, if that is it for public comment, I'm going to take a motion now for disposition of this warrant article. And because there is so much sort of unknown at this point, I am going to phrase the motion as follows. That I would take a motion to support acquisition of a new fire truck with a maximum cost, a limit on the cost of $850,000, and all procurement, the following of a procurement process that is led by the town administrator and involves a representative from both Capital Budget Committee and Sherborn Advisory Committee. So that would be the motion that I would entertain, and I'm asking if someone wishes to make that motion on advisory.
I'll make that
Jeff.
motion, Mary. I'll support the motion to create a commitment of $850,000 and to work with the fire department and the town administrator. And actually, you can vote afterwards, but I'll volunteer to be the person if I'm acceptable to the fire department. To make sure the procurement process reflects those wishes and gets the best vehicle that we definitely need in town.
And is there a second for the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Then we'll have discussion.
And then we'll have discussion. So I've seconded
You
it.
seconded it? Okay, and now discussion.
My only comments, I think, would be, I mean, either you believe we need the truck or you don't. And if we need the truck, we got to buy the truck. I mean, if that's what you believe, and I believe we do, from what I've heard from the chief. My question is, do we usually try to get funding before the bids? I know there was a price you guys had found, but do we usually get, just by way of,
Well,
process?
from what I understand, the way this particular process is working is that the fire department has gone out with what you would refer to as a sanitized quote, where they have given functional specs to a variety of vendors, asking for proposals. Once they received this, they now have I will call it a specification, a general specification for a truck that they wish to purchase, and they will then put that specification out to bid. And if they go through the MAPC, the MAPC provides vetted bids that if you choose to use them, your price is guaranteed at that for what that bid covers. If that, and that's where the procurement committee will, not committee, task force would come in to deal with it. Lanny?
Well, I would question putting the limit of $850,000 on it. I mean, if we're that close to, I mean, they have a tentative bid of $880. Do we want to foul up the whole deal by putting that limit on? Shouldn't we go with the $900,000? We're going to try to buy it for less if we can, but to potentially, create a complication because we've set a limit slightly too low just seems to me sort of foolish.
I think one of the motivations for that is that this is a public meeting and our vote is public number. And so, perhaps people bidding on this may take that into consideration and bid accordingly.
My view, I think we should go with the 900,000. I have confidence that the people involved will get the lowest price possible. And again, if we come in too low, we're going to it's going to be a problem negotiating deal. Secondly, I do not agree. I don't think I agree unless I find out that we've been doing this for years past. I do not see what the role of advisory committee is, having someone participate in this negotiation. I don't view that as the role of advisory. Our role should be more strategic. This is about as tactical as it gets. It's super tactical. We have a chief of the fire department. He was hired because he has the skill to do what he has to do. We have David Williams, who was hired in part because he has the skill to do this negotiation. What role advisory is going to play once we get past approving the purchase, of course, what role we play in negotiating a fire truck is beyond me, just as a point of civic responsibility. So I would oppose the conditions that you've put on this approval.
The fire department we've been working with the fire department and capital budget, and this was a feeling of general agreement that this was, and it's not that capital budget representative and advisory representative will be in negotiations with the actual companies, but more as participants and overseers of the process and as being overseers of all matters financial in the town, being part of the charge of advisory. I see that as appropriate.
We have about $25 million in operating budget that we don't spend time overseeing that it's spent properly. I think this is not the role of advisory. And we have all kinds of capital projects, perhaps not 900,000, but significant numbers. We have Pine Hill, we do other things, and I've never seen us, at least in the last 4 or 5 years, be overseers. I'm not even sure what an overseer of that process is supposed to do, other than to look at it. Anyway, that's all I have to say.
Neil?
Neil McPherson, Great Rock Road. Just want to point out, number one, again, David is the Chief Procurement Officer, so as part of this process, number one, we have a history of having sanitized bids, but number two, David oversees the entire process. Also, having worked very closely with the chief, all right, I would just say to you, and based upon the recent information we got this week, that we would be uncomfortable with 850 at this point, based upon additional research that was done. The second point becomes, this truck is already 22 years old. We know we have a build time of 1 to 2 years, so we're getting close to 24 years. If, in fact, we don't have enough money, what then happens? Does that mean we have to go back to town meeting and ask for $50,000 so the whole process gets pushed off at least another year? And if that is the case, I would say that's a risk that certainly, as the Assistant Chief of the Fire Department, I am absolutely not comfortable with based upon the condition reliability of the issue, the reliability of the truck as it sits today. So certainly, speaking as the Assistant Chief, I would be very uncomfortable in limiting ourselves when we just don't know. We will find out what the cost will be when the bids are put out. And we have not done that, and we can't do that until the full RFP is put out and the FCAM list is out for us to look at state bids and what we can do there. Thank you.
Couldn't that have been done like 2 years ago, though? I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but couldn't you have figured out like the ballpark cost a couple of years ago so we could do something a little more concrete?
Well, number one, the costs change every year. Right? Number two, the state bids change every year. So we've developed over the past 18 months what the general specifications would be that we want to see. I'd also point out when you talk about a fire truck specification, some of these specifications we've drawn up in the past have been over 200 pages. You specify every single element of that truck that you want, including how it's built, the size, the cabinet space. So very simply, it is a huge undertaking, and we typically have not gone ahead and gone into that level of detail until we know we have the support of the town.
Sean Killeen, 1 Butler Street. I'm going to point out that I'll be in front of you in a few minutes to discuss a project that was underfunded, and I think we're right now witnessing the advisory board trying to underfund a project, possibly, that may fail. And I'm not in support of an $850,000 purchase. That's not the truck purchase, that's also the equipment on it.
Bob?
Bob Delaney, 46 Pleasant Street. I am concerned, as has already been mentioned, about put a $900,000 figure out there in a public meeting, that's going to be the number. People can see that. We've had experiences like this in the past, which, in regard to personnel, but nevertheless, it's possible. And so I, for one, would be in favor of the lower figure, $850,000. And I think the vote of the town at town meeting will certainly confirm that, if need be, we could go higher. And I don't think a vote of $850,000 in favor of buying the new truck would indicate that we weren't going to support it for something extra.
Bob Searle, 32 Old Orchard Road. A couple things. One is the fire chief invited us to participate in the process, and I do think there's value in having another set of eyes and some different perspectives in that process because it is very complicated. And so we're happy to participate under those circumstances. In terms of what the number should be, as I said before, I think we're a little bit uncomfortable putting a number out. Speaking now as capital budget, until we see the new contracts for MAPC, which we hope are out before town meeting. So we would want to have a number that we collectively were comfortable with for town meeting. But in the absence of that data, I think it's difficult to do. And the last thing I'll do is just piggyback on Sean's comment. We're coming back to revisit, and we can talk more about it. Number 8, last year that That item came to us literally in this meeting, and it was never fully vetted, and I think that may be one of the reasons we're revisiting it now. So I think we need to make sure we do these things very thoroughly, and they're complicated.
Rick Aston, Prospect Street. I'd like to remind people that 5 or 6 years ago, the fire department received a military vehicle that we retrofitted. We took our labor, our time, and gave this town another brush truck with our labor. So we spend our money wisely, and the chief is going to be very diligent about the way he's going to spend the money on this particular truck.
Peter?
Just from my perspective, I think I follow the sentiments that Jeff had expressed earlier. I think those make good sense. I think what you have is an openness to have assistance in making the right purchase decision. I don't know that your motion needs to be make that a contingency of this capital item. I also think that the 900,000, the not to exceed 900,000, is probably a wiser way to go, given so many of these unknowns that are spoken. I don't know that it's a critical thing in terms of showing cards to the potential vendors. I'm a vendor, in my business, I'm a vendor of stuff to various folks, including municipalities. I have a list price, and the folks that I sell to will grind me down, and that I would expect that we would do the same. We would grind somebody down on price to the extent there's price opportunity. So I don't think somebody's going to play with their pricing structure necessarily, given that they already know what our budget is.
Elliot Taylor again. If you go for the lower figure and the bids come in above that, can the advisory committee say this is an unforeseen expense and you can take money out of free cash and make up the difference?
No, once the budget is set, the budget is set.
Not to mention they were foreseeing.
Robert?
Robert Johnson, 272 Western Avenue. I would encourage you to reconsider the amount and make it 900,000. You are out there, and if somebody sees that there's only 850 and their price is 870, they won't even bid on it. So I think it's wise to have the 900 so that we get the maximum number of bidders.
Madam Chair, just for process, I would move that your motion be amended to change the 850 to 900 and remove the conditions of the advisory committee and capital participating. I would note that, because I don't think it's a good idea, as I said before, to have that as a condition. I think it's a bad precedent. Nothing prevents, if the chief wants help from advisory or capital, nothing prevents those folks or those organizations from helping, and if indeed he wants it, then we will get the same result, in my view, without making it a condition. So I move to amend your motion to 900,000 without the conditions. I would ask for a second somewhere.
Second.
I'll second that.
That secondary motion has been moved and seconded. All in favor? There's 1, 2, 3, 5. All opposed? 2. Are you, what are you doing? Are you opposing or are you abstaining? Okay, so that would be the motion. The new motion then would be to propose the acquisition of a fire truck with a maximum limit of $900,000. I guess that would be the motion. Do I have a motion for that?
Second.
We haven't had, someone hasn't.
Maybe a movie.
What?
Okay, a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion, I would just like to say that this has been a long and difficult process, working with the fire department on this, and one of the things that we were able to do to come to closure on the concept of acquiring a new vehicle versus possibly saying no new vehicle or only used vehicle or a considerably lower sum of money, was the presence, we negotiated is the wrong term, we came to an agreement among myself, Bob Searle, as chair of capital budget, and the fire chief, that it would be advantageous to the town and to the procurement process to obviously have it led by town administrator David Williams, and that the presence of a member from capital budget and from advisory would be a good thing. So that's my comment on that, and we continue to, well, some of us, obviously not all of us, a minority of us, I guess, at this point, continue to feel that the presence of representatives from the town's financial committees would be a worthwhile thing to have on this procurement process, in this procurement process. So is there any other comment on that? Okay.
You know, given the size of the purchase, I think it is probably beneficial and appropriate to have someone from this committee who is responsible for advising the town on, you know, budgets and other decisions participate in the process, just for a comfort level sake. And that may still happen. I don't, you know, amending the motion doesn't prevent Jeff or somebody else from participating in the process. I guess my, I'm, you know, wholly for the truck, but I really feel that these proposals expand to the size of the amount of money that are devoted to it. So that would be my concern with the larger number, notwithstanding Peter's experience to the contrary.
So I guess at this point, I will take a vote on the motion. As stated, to acquire, to allot a maximum of $900,000 for the purchase of a fire truck. And I guess the motion at this point is as simple as that.
I think it's been made.
And it has been made and seconded, so we'll vote on that now. All in favor? Opposed? Motion passes 7-1. Okay, second capital item, the police department, a police command vehicle at $45,000. Do we have anyone speaking for this? We do.
You do.
Okay.
Good morning, Chief Thompson from the Sherborn Police Department.
We know who you are.
17 Washington Street, am I supposed to identify my address?
Yes, you are.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to do a brief PowerPoint presentation on this command vehicle.
We can't hear you up back here.
Sorry?
You're not speaking.
I'm not speaking loud enough? I'm sorry, Kitty. I'm going to do a brief PowerPoint presentation on a command vehicle. So, as first responders, the police department must be prepared to handle a myriad of emergent situations when our residents visit us to our town and our neighboring communities are counting on us to help. We deal with missing persons, weather emergencies, crime scenes, railway mishaps, school-related incidents, and mutual aid. From an operational standpoint, the incidents we respond to occur in the field. To best address critical incidents, we must be mobile and bring our office and tools to the scene. These are some examples of some of the equipment I'm thinking about putting in this vehicle. So if you look at the rear of that SUV, it has the ability to pull out a whiteboard. It's got a mobile radio on the top. I plan on putting a bank of radio chargers and a laptop computer. Therefore, we've identified the need to introduce a police command vehicle to our fleet, a Chevrolet Tahoe PPV, they call it. It's the police patrol vehicle, and it looks like that. The Chevrolet PPV was selected because it is the only police-rated SUV that has the capacity to house the equipment needed to respond and deploy effectively during an emergent situation. We compared the Chevrolet PPV to the Ford and Dodge police-rated vehicles that are on the state bid listing and found the Chevrolet PPV to be the superior product. Additionally, our state bid vendor, Liberty Chevrolet, has proven to be the most supportive dealership to our police department. They've been a voice to the manufacturer and helped to save costs to the town when vehicle maintenance is required beyond what our CM&D mechanic is able to address. And additionally, I want to add that Liberty is holding on to a 2013 Tahoe for us. The 2014 is going to be about $4,000 or $5,000 more.
Not for us.
Additionally, the police department will be replacing our 2005 Ford Crown Victoria unmarked vehicle that we were forced to utilize in a patrol capacity. That's been sitting down at the CM&D garage since roughly November.
Why is that, Rick?
I'll get to that, Bob. That's the interior of the 2005 Crown Vic. That was supposed to be used as a backup vehicle. I show this picture because it doesn't have a prisoner protective cage. That's the center console. If you kind of look up there. Why is my laser pointer working? Very, very minimal amount of lighting, simply a radio, no computer that we normally would use in a patrol vehicle. You can see the wear and tear of the vehicle, the holes in the seats. If you look up there, the steering wheel is damaged. And there's the engine. And to answer Bob's question, we would have needed approximately $4,500 to replace a head gasket for this vehicle. Our 2005 Ford Crown Victoria was to be utilized as a spare patrol vehicle as well as for use by officers when attending training, transporting evidence to our state lab, and for court appearances. The spare vehicle allows us to minimize mileage and wear and tear on our patrol fleet and gives us an option when our patrol fleet is being serviced. We grounded this vehicle in November, as I mentioned, when we learned it needed approximately $4,500 in repairs to pass inspection. It should be noted that this is the third consecutive year that the police department had to ground a patrol vehicle. Our 2010 all-wheel drive Ford Taurus will replace the 2005 Ford Crown Victoria. So this move by the police department is actually twofold. We're introducing a command vehicle, and we're putting a backup vehicle back in the fleet. This is our police department inventory and replacement schedule for the vehicles that we have. It shows mileage on the current vehicles. This is the 2005 Crown Victoria that needs to be replaced. This is the Ford Taurus that we're going to put back to replace the Crown Victoria. I wanted to note that this Expedition I got for the town at a cost of about $43,000, including all the bells and whistles for nothing. And I also got this 2013 Chevy Impala that I've assigned to the detective at no cost to the town.
That's 5 minutes, Chief. Don't hold it against me.
And here are the estimated costs. The Chevy Tahoe PPV is approximately $36,000. The command cabinet that I showed that's going to be placed in the rear gate is approximately $4,000. We're going to be introducing 2 mobile radios, one in the driver's compartment, one at the rear gate. A Toughbook computer made by Panasonic at about $2,500, and a radio charging bank at $5,000. So the total cost would be approximately $45,000.
Great, thank you very much.
Okay.
And I'll open this up to a comment from the floor.
Bob Searle, 32 Old Orchard. Just want to say the Capital Budget Committee is in favor of this article.
Sean Killeen, 1 Butler Street. I just want to request that if the town could keep the used vehicles that they're storing maybe in the parking lots down here for everyone to see them instead of the abutters on Butler Street, that'd be great.
What's your plate number, sir?
You know,
No further comment from the floor? Okay, I'll open this up to comment from advisory.
I have a
Questions?
question, I think, and Rick, can correct me if I'm wrong, I think this is sort of a dual presentation, because we're actually buying a cruiser and a command vehicle. What we're voting on here right now, I think, is just the command vehicle. One thing that it brings, though, and like I said, if I misspeak, correct me, Rick, we're currently showing the cruiser replacement in the police department budget as an operating expense, and we're showing the command vehicle as a capital expense. And though we've talked about where we come out of the bottom of the town's budget, we may use some of our free cash or surplus to make some what otherwise could be capital expenditures. But I just want to point out that we're sort of treating these two they're both about $45,000 or within a few $1,000s of each other. They're both additions to the police department, which I think are definitely needed. I support what they're doing, but one's shown as an operating expense and one is shown as capital expense.
One of the reasons for that is that we're trying to get, we had a cruiser rotation going here for a while in the town, and then when we had our severe budget situations, that sort of got off track, and we're trying to bring that back. The other thing that is that I think Rick said that this particular vehicle, might also think of it as a capital expense, because whereas the cruisers will rotate over a 3-year period, this will be a 10-year more vehicle.
We feel strongly that this particular command vehicle will have a life expectancy of beyond 12 years. And the fact that we're putting the Taurus back as a backup vehicle, we can extend the life of that for probably 10 to 12 years as well.
Right, and so, actually, I was going to ask a question similar to what Jeff brought up here. So, when we commit to the $45,000 for the vehicle only, no, so that does include the ancillary equipment
Correct.
there. Okay.
Correct.
That's, because when you first started showing the pictures of all the stuff you were going to put in it, I thought, whoa, great. So,
Yeah.
Okay.
Just to note, I think we're required to expense items that might look like capital because of how much they are, but they have a short life and don't meet the requirements. So that's why it's on the
right.
operating budget.
That's why patrol cruisers have been purchased by line item, because they have about a 3-year life expectancy.
Yeah, the town's capital policy and its bylaws is 5-year life and $10,000 or more.
So any further public comments on this? Okay, then I will open the voting on this and take a motion.
Okay, I'm sorry. We have put this on hold, waiting some more information, which we had a great presentation. So I know I'm sold, and I think my colleague, one or more of my colleagues are sold. So Mike is anxious to make a motion, and I'll accept the motion to approve this support. And I would second that motion. So any discussion? All in favor? Great.
All right.
Thanks.
Then,
Good job, Rick.
okay, so I will take a motion up here to vote favorable action on the police department request for a command vehicle in the amount of $45,000. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Whatever. And all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous by all present. All right, next item, CM&D, snow fighter dump truck for $175,000. Is there a proponent for that here?
Ed Wagner, Director of CM&D. This year we're looking for $175,000 for the replacement of a 2001 Mack dump truck, which we also coined the term a snow fighter. This vehicle has approximately 6,000 hours, and we use this primarily for our snow operations. It's a mainline sander and snow fighting vehicle. We also utilize it in the summertime for asphalt, roadway repair, hauling of materials. The vehicle currently is plain and simply just unreliable. Every snowstorm we've had this out this year, we have had to take it off of the road. And taking it off the road has not been for a large ticket repair item, but it's mainly the small things that come with a vehicle of its age. And this is part of our capital plan. It is due for replacement. And so
And CM&D has had a capital plan for a long time, and
We do have a
advisory,
10-year plan.
advisory appreciates that very much, that you've been in the forefront of providing us with those types of things. So, okay, any comment from the floor on this? No? Okay, I'll bring the discussion up here. Are there comments or questions from advisory?
I assume it's approved by capital? I assume this has been approved by capital committee?
Bob?
Yes.
All right, then I will take a motion to vote favorably on the snow fighter dump truck for the CM&D department in the amount of $175,000. Motion?
Motion to do that?
Second? Any further discussion here? All right, all in favor? Opposed? No? Okay. That is unanimous by all present. Ed, don't sit down. Fuel accounting software. So the next item is number 4 in the capital, fuel accounting software in the amount of $21,000.
This system here is it sits on top of our pumps, which services police, fire, CM&D, school. And what it basically does is accounts for all the fuel utilized in every vehicle. Each vehicle is given its own unique key. So when fuel is dispensed, it tracks what vehicle, what date, what time, how much they used, and then transfers it off to my PC. The system currently runs on DOS. Which,
Did you say DOS?
And that is? No,
yeah, that should end the discussion right there. So we do want to upgrade this. The problem is that the main board system has failed on a number of occasions. I believe it's failed twice this year and once early in December. And each time it does fail, I do lose all of the data of what fuel was dispensed, and therefore not accounting for. It's unreliable. When it does go down, Murphy's Law says that it always happens at night on a weekend or a holiday, and the fire department and police are usually the ones that are mostly put out by this system and have to find other means to procure gas in order to keep operations going. The cost that I'm looking for, I'm going to throw it out to bid, so it may be lower than that, but that is the upper bid that I did receive for accounting purposes.
Will this allow you to use an Apple Lisa?
Anyway.
Will this allow you to port to an Apple Lisa? Just wondering. Okay. So, any discussion from the floor?
The selectmen support this.
Any discussion up here? Okay, then I will accept a motion to vote favorably on CM&D request for fuel accounting software in the amount of $21,000. Second?
Second.
All in favor? That's unanimous by the 8 people present. Okay. Item 5, transfer station paving and water drainage project. Do we have someone who will speak to this?
Yes. There was a capital item last year that approved, it was $80,000 for an overlay of the transfer station, plus a replacement of a few containers, I think there were 4 or 5 containers, and then replacing the fencing around the transfer station. We went ahead with the fencing and the container project, which cost about, I think it was $15,000 or so. And then what we want to do is fix the drainage issues there before we put any pavement down on the transfer station. So we wanted to reauthorize some money from left over from last year's appropriation, plus new money, which is in the $65,000.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second with a question? On that reauthorization, that does not have to come through us, is that correct?
It
then
does.
where will that, right, so
It's not on here.
I don't see it on here.
I have to talk to Barbara about the wording on the motion.
Okay, okay.
The problem was that the article was too specific, and we want to use it now to do a full reclamation.
No, I mean, I know, I just,
We have to reword
Not
the
seeing it here.
original vote from last year.
go ahead, I'm sorry.
There are some, we had been talking with town council that there may not need to be a reauthorization if what we're doing is fitting within the new, yeah. So the project now would design the drainage issue, and then it would put in about a 2-foot base, I think, of reclaim of what's existing there now, and then put the overlay over the top, so it should have a longer life expectancy of more like 10 years as opposed to 2 or 3 years.
Is there any comment from the floor on this?
Selectmen support this.
Can I just add that this is quite urgent. The condition at this transfer station is quite bad. There are large potholes. They are impossible to maintain. We have sent CM&D down there with quick fixes, but because of the water and the lack of drainage, it doesn't hold, won't stay. This is a facility that many people use. We want to encourage recycling. We want to encourage the use of the facility. It absolutely needs to be done.
Peter?
Peter Lifford on Dopping Brook Road. I just want to be clear, there was $85,000 last year, of which 15 has been spent, leaving $70,000, and this is a request for an additional $65,000. So we're looking at a project that's $135,000? No?
I think so.
Yeah.
No, it'd be 115,000, it'd be a 65,000 reauthorization, I mean, I'm sorry, 50,000 reauthorization and then 65,000 new
So
money.
you spent $35,000.
There was a replacement of the containers and then the replacement of the fencing that was paid out of there.
Okay. I just want to say that, given the greater extent of work that's being done and the longevity to the project, I completely support this, but I want to be clear on what the numbers were, and it looks like then it's 65 plus 50, or it's a $115,000 project to get us a transfer station that basically is going to operate more safely and last longer. Thank you.
Any comment up here?
Can you clarify just that last point? So last year, there was an $80,000 appropriation, 85 of which 15 was spent.
Yeah, I don't know if his math is right. There is a question on that. I think it's closer to 65
7,
left
yeah.
over plus 65 this year, but
It's 7.
sometimes I speak when I'm not speaking.
7.
So, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but my recollection was the total was 85, or whatever it was, but 53 is the number I have in my head that was specifically for the repaving. The rest of it was for fence replacement and for container replacement, so my sense is that piece of it has been spent. What's left over was the repaving, and as several people have said, this is a more extensive version of that will last longer and actually probably is the right thing. We should have been doing it that way.
Does Ruth, do you have the specifics on this?
So what's left over from last year is going to be either returned, and this is new money that's being appropriated, or?
There would be $65,000 new money, and then reauthorizing whatever available balance there was of last year, which my estimate was 50,000. So the 65 plus the 50 brings me 115, and we have estimates for the drainage design of 113. So the new project cost would be around 115.
Maybe I'm slow today or in general, but last year was 85,000, and now we're appropriating another 65,000, so that would be 150.
50 of the 80 would be reauthorized, so that means 30 of it would go, whatever the balance is remaining after the purchase of the fence and the containers would go back into the general fund. I just don't know if that's 5,000, 10,000.
Okay, so the money's going back in, but we're now authorizing another 65.
Yeah, the new money is 65 new, and then 50,000 reauthorization from the balance that was left over from last year.
On the feeling that's about 115 would be the
Right.
total project. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for the clarification.
And capital budget did support this as well.
So, yes. Pardon me?
I have the article from last year.
Okay.
So it was 80,000 was the total. 50,000, it says, I'm just reading exactly what it says. Of the total amount requested, approximately 50,000 is for the repaving, 11,000 for the new fence, and the balance for the new containers. So it was roughly $50,000.
Susie?
Hi, Susan Tyler. Question. So we had 80,000 minus approximately 15,000, so that leaves 65,000 from last year. You want a new 65,000 this year, and I just heard that about approximately a bid of just on the drainage project, portion of it is 113, so how much is that?
No, the drainage design was 8,000, drainage installation was 15,000, the reclamation binder course of the resurfacing was another 90. So the total was 113.
Okay, 113. I thought it was just 113 for the drainage project of it.
No, I'm
paving,
sorry.
'cause we've been at this too many years.
If I could add, it took some engineering here because the pavement serves also as potentially as a cap. And so we had to see how far down, what was underneath, and we hired, I think, Norfolk Ram, and some work had to be done. We didn't have all the information last year. Some of the engineering came in after the appropriation was made. That's when we discovered that we could do more. We had originally thought we could only do the quick fix and the Band-Aid, but now the engineers are saying we can, in fact, do this right. And if we're going to do a municipal project and spend money, let's do it right so that it lasts, rather than the quick Band-Aid, which is 1 or 2 years, and we'll be back here looking for another bit of money in 2 years. This will give us 10 years, maybe more.
Thank you. Jeff?
I think I support this project, but I have to confess, I think this is deja vu all over again. This is the third time in, I think, the last 3 years, maybe 4 years, that we figured out how to take care of the problem at the transfer station, and that the amount of money we appropriated would be sufficient to do it without going haywire. And then the next year, we realized we were wrong, and then the next year, we realized we were wrong. And so now we're here the third time. So I'm just hoping against hope that we figured it out this time, because this is the exact same justification that we've heard 2 years prior, that we finally figured it out, and this is now a long-term fix, and as opposed to all the ones in the past which were short-term fixes. And we're going to do it right this time. I believe you. I'm just saying this is the third time we've heard the exact same story, and we never did it, because each year we find out that what we thought was the case the year before turns out not to be the case. So maybe the third time's the charm.
Since the closure of the landfill, the town has proceeded believing that the whole entryway to the transfer station was part of the cap, and that's not true. So then there was a fear of what is buried there. We don't know what's buried there, and do we really want to dig there and find something and then have to report it?
Are you sure you want to say this, David?
No, we had fear of gremlins under there, and last year's number was to just cover up the gremlins and be quiet about it.
Right.
We
So
confirmed the gremlins don't exist. We're happy.
what we did was, on the day that it was closed, Ed got a backhoe and we went up and dug holes, 3 or 4 test pits, and then showed the results to Norfolk Ram, showed them pictures of how deep the good soil was, and they agreed that, yeah, we could go down there, and then they confirmed that that is not part of the cap that's under the state license.
In Washington, they know it's not the crime, it's the cover-up.
That's right. So we're not covering up.
Yeah.
Doing it right.
So any more comment there? Okay. So I will take a motion to vote favorably on transfer station paving and water drainage project in the amount of $65,000. Someone care to move that, please?
So moved.
Second? Second. All right, all in favor? Everybody get everybody here? Yeah, okay, so 8-0 of all those present.
Madam Chairman?
Yes, Paul.
Could we also ask that you reauthorize or redirect the 50,000 from last year's warrant article as part of this appropriation?
You could ask. I am not, my objection to this is not philosophical or particularly financial, it is simply procedural. If this is something that, I would look to Corey for a, looking at you, Corey.
Here's my off the top of my head reply is that once the expenditure has been authorized as a warrant article, the money remains available for a purpose that is specified in the original article, so that you actually don't need a reauthorization to spend it. It's only kind of a seal the deal handshake, but it's not a requirement.
Okay, Bob, you have the last year's article. Maybe if you could just read that to us, we'd all understand if in fact that is the case. Unless it's really long, which is. We don't care.
Let me read you a story. That's all.
Is it a bedtime story?
That's not it. I have to find it. Oh, here we go. Sorry. This is line 7 of Article 8 from last year. It says, the Recycling Committee has obtained bids providing reliable estimates on the cost of repaving the publicly accessible areas of the transfer station, replacing the dilapidated fence to the facility, and replacing rusted and leaking storage containers now located on the site. The paving is necessary to remedy increasingly deteriorating conditions, which are no longer repairable through asphalt patching work, as the new patching deteriorates almost immediately due to the years of deferred maintenance of the heavily traveled surfaces to and from the facility. The improvements are necessary to preserve public safety. Pardon me? I don't know what. Okay, I don't know what that is.
I have the
I'm sorry.
motion. I have the motion that was done last year.
Actually, it's the language of the motion.
I have that.
Oh, I don't have that. I only have this.
Oh, so last year, line 7. Line 7, transfer station asphalt overlay fencing containers. Mary Wolf moved. I move that the sum of $80,000 be appropriated to install an asphalt overlay and purchase and install fencing and containers at the transfer station, and the treasurer, with the approval of the Board of Selectmen, shall be authorized to borrow $80,000 pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 44, Section 734, or any other applicable statute. Provide, however, that this appropriation shall not take effect until the town votes to exempt from the limitation on total taxes imposed by the General Laws, Chapter 59, all sorts of sections, the amounts required to pay the principal and interest on the bonds and notes authorized by this vote. So it wasn't even specific to paving.
Right. So it seems to be within the four corners, I would say.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't think we need to.
We talked to bond counsel, and they determined that the language from last year was not appropriate for this project.
Okay.
So that's why we were debating on the authorization. If I can work the finances so that last year's money is specifically only going towards the overlay, then it would be legal.
We're not doing an overlay.
The problem is we're not doing an overlay.
Exactly.
That's
But
what bond counsel was troubled by.
I heard the word paving in there.
Right,
That seems
right.
to cover, that covers it for me. And drainage.
The problem is that bond counsel has to approve the borrowing, and it was a Prop 2.5 override, so that the advice I saw in a memo from
town
one of the
council.
lawyers, town council, I think it was, that said that the safest course for the town is to repurpose that from an asphalt overlay to this is a full reclamation project, so they wanted the wording changed.
Okay.
And the motion was asphalt overlay.
Okay, so if,
We're not going to do an asphalt overlay.
okay, so you would like a motion to,
Apply the appropriation previously voted last year to this purpose.
okay, so then, yes.
Upon the further piece of information about the advice of bond counsel, because this was an override vote last year, I agree procedurally that we need we need to revisit the question to reauthorize it. I understand it. But I'm a little perplexed about doing it, of raising this issue now,
right.
because it's going to have to be a separate vote at town meeting, and it's not necessarily, unless you want to incorporate it in a common motion for both things?
Yes, what I would
Okay.
propose is that the motion that advisory should make would be to appropriate $115,000 to be funded first by transferring $50,000 from Article whatever of last year, and secondly, new appropriation of $65,000, which, depending on how you decide, would be subject to a new override, just the $65,000. If you're going to use free cash, then it would be a transfer from free cash. But the total appropriation for the project would be $115,000.
I understand your point now, but you're not really looking for a separate vote from the advisory committee. You're looking for a more complex motion.
Right.
And maybe this would have been a good issue to raise at the time the original motion was made.
So can this be handled at town meeting through the motion? Do we have to deal with this now?
Well, let me try.
This is one of several that we're getting put on us right now.
How about I move that we reconsider what we just approved about the transfer paving, and then do what Paul said.
Okay, if you would like to make that motion.
I did.
Okay.
Well, actually, I have sort of a technical
Well,
point here.
let's get a second on the motion, and then we can discuss.
Second.
Okay.
Well, I wonder if we're being too narrow here. You know, we really are doing an overlay now, too. In the old process, we were doing an overlay over crap, basically, that's already there. Now we're actually doing the drainage, and we're preparing a proper foundation, but we're still really doing an asphalt overlay over a much more stable foundation and subsoil.
I thought they said it wasn't an asphalt
So, I don't know if, you know, the word of paving versus overlay, I think we're making too, and I am a civil engineer, I think we're making too fine of a distinction.
But the key is what bond council says.
Bond
Right.
council has to
Whatever we
approve.
voted,
This is
they don't
a more
approve.
technical question than a financial question, I guess.
No, it's not. It's not.
It's a legal issue from bond council.
All right, George?
George Shea, 19 Deerfield Road, Sherborn, Massachusetts. I think that I wasn't sure who voted for the original motion that you're now going to try to reconsider. Well, if that's the case, there's no one on the winning side, is it? That can make the motion?
No, we didn't vote.
No, it's the other way around.
Oh,
I'm
it-
sorry,
it
it's the
was
other way
made and
around.
seconded, but I don't think it was voted.
We're still in discussion.
Then you don't need a motion to reconsider.
All right.
Right.
We do not need one?
No, we're not reconsidering it because it wasn't voted.
I want you to move to amend the motion.
You amend the
Amend the
motion.
motion.
I move to amend the
There you
motion,
go.
like Paul said.
Okay, and does Pete want to speak to that?
Pete Oakland, Town Treasurer. The only caution I'd add is here, if bond council has to approve our borrowing when we actually go out for the money, excuse me. So I would suggest that if bond council is recommending this motion, that we do it.
Okay. All right, so restate it.
I move to amend the prior motion such that, what do we say? That we approve $65,000 and repurpose the $50,000 or the balance from last year's Article 8, Section 7.
Can I suggest
Yes.
that you approve $115,000, of which 50
It'll be
will come
right
from
from
transfer
Article 7.
from Article 8 of 2013, and 65 be funded this year.
So he's made the move.
Oh, well, what Paul said.
All right, and do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion up here? All right, all in favor? That's all you people present voting for. All right, number 6, Farm Pond Management Plan. $25,000.
Amendment to approve.
Do we have,
I've been asked by the chair of the Farm Pond Advisory Committee to request that to be taken up last, to give her time to get here.
okay, so you're putting a hold on that.
Can I?
I believe, let's see, again, I have a procedure here that it says that a member of advisory may do that. I am,
Well,
it's not
David
that I'm...
may be able to do it. If you stick with your procedure, he'll do as best he can.
I'll do it. I'll move that we take it up last.
Oh.
Okay.
The motion is to defer this consideration of
He
this.
doesn't even have to make a motion. He can just put a hold on it.
Okay. Can I ask a procedural question? On the last motion, we moved to amend it, but do we actually have to vote the motion now? I know we're getting
We didn't
silly,
vote
but I think
yet.
we have to vote for the
We
115.
didn't vote yet, right.
Because we just voted to amend. I'm not,
We voted to amend the motion.
So
We
we all
didn't vote
agreed
to
to
vote
amend
on
it.
the motion.
On the amended one.
so now we have to vote the amended motion,
Okay. All right.
just to dot the i's and cross the
Okay,
t's.
let's, can we do this and then go back to that? Is that possible? Because, so that we just don't get into this rabbit hole?
Kind of clarifying question, though, why are we deferring this one?
Because a member of advisory has requested that we do, and that's all it takes.
That's fine, and how long are we deferring for, we don't know?
We're deferring it till the end.
Until somebody shows up.
The end, to the end.
Just till sometime later today?
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Okay, so we are now going to
We're gonna wait till that.
Vote.
You want us to do it now?
we are going to, yes.
The transfer station question, you approved the amendment, but did
Right, we
you
didn't
vote
vote.
on the amendment?
We're doing it now.
Made motion?
And we're about to do that.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I thought
That's
you were
okay.
going on.
All right, so I will take a motion to fund the transfer station paving and water drainage project, to recommend favorable action on that, to the amount of $115,000, $65,000 of which will be a new appropriation, and $50,000 of which will be a transfer of funds from the monies appropriated last year in the motion for Article 8 at the 2013 annual town meeting.
8-7.
I got it.
Okay, so that is, can I have that motion?
Point of clarification on that motion, should we make it be whatever remains from last year? We're using 50,000, but we don't know the exact number. Do we want to just say all the remaining funds from last year?
No, because there's only a certain amount that was appropriated.
Okay.
All right, so can I have that motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Okay. 8-0. All right, capital needs for Pine Hill School, $112,000. And we have our trusty proponent here, Frank.
Thank you. Frank Hess, 64 South Main Street, member of the school committee and the Pine Hill School Building Committee. As most of you know, because of a request from the Capital Budget Committee for more long-term capital needs information, the Sherborn Public Schools contracted for a firm to perform a study of the Pine Hill School physical plant and to project long-term viability and capital needs. We received this report in November of 2012, and since that time have been using the report to guide our capital request. The request before you is for safety, health, energy efficiency, and suitability for learning. Okay, the FY15 request, I get my machine to work, is for $112,000, and this is to fulfill the following needs: replace rooftop heating units in the cafeteria and kitchen, replace auditorium windows, replace rugs with tile in 8 library wing classrooms, replace the art room floor and perform asbestos My machine's playing with me here. Asbestos abatement. Replace failed drop-down ceiling insulation for hallways A, B, and C. And replace the tractor that is absolutely necessary for snow removal. These numbers are listed here for you. The rooftop units are around $36,000, of which $30,000 will come from previous annual town meeting appropriations for a $6,000 cost. The auditorium windows are about $19,500. The flooring for the library classroom is about $27,000. The art floor and asbestos removal about $8,400. The hall insulation around $33,000, and the tractor $1,770. So that's our request for this year. We try to be rather conservative in our requests. So any questions?
Okay, any comments from the floor?
Selectmen support this.
Okay. Bob? Capital budget?
Yes, capital budget supports this.
Michael?
Michael Lesser, 54 Forest Street. Do you have flexibility in how you spend that money? For example, the insulation for the halls, could you spend that on other kind of improvements to the envelope of the building if you found them to be more cost effective?
The way it is normally worded is usually for extraordinary repairs. And so I think we do have some flexibility because some people are looking at, do you want it, right over the hallways, or do you want it where the air might be coming in from the classrooms over the classrooms? So there are different ways I think it could be used. I think it's good to have the flexibility. One reason we have money left over for the rooftop units is because a number of years ago there was a very specific thing that was written only for rooftop units. And so since we were holding on to those and they were lasting and now they need to be replaced, they couldn't be used for anything else before this. So now the rooftop units are being replaced.
So I'm still not clear whether you should just change it to building envelope improvements, or whether it's too late for that, or whether you feel you...
Well, I think the way the motion usually comes is extraordinary repairs for the Pine Hill School. And these are the intended uses, but I think you do have flexibility within those needs.
That would be addressed by the motion. I mean,
Right.
we're basically approving funding for these expenses.
Right.
So,
Okay. So it's clear to you that there's flexibility, that you could do it some other where in the building to improve the efficiency of the building? I guess...
It is to me. I mean, this is a need. Let me tell you about the hallways. We'll have a payback, but one thing happened in the hallways this past winter, one of those really cold days, is a pipe in the ceiling froze. It did not break, okay? But if it had broken on some Friday night, then we would have had a mess on Monday morning. So that is one thing we have to address in some way or another.
Sean? That's all right. You're
Sean Killeen, I'm also on the capital committee, and to Michael's point, it's debatable exactly how we're going to insulate that. So he doesn't want to get pigeonholed on the exact type of insulation.
Okay.
We do need to fix it, but
And that can be taken care of in the motion at town meeting. And we're appropriating funds for various expenditures as outlined here.
Yes.
Okay. Any questions, comments from advisory? Okay, any further public comment? Okay, then I will take a motion to recommend favorable action on the capital needs projects presented here for Pine Hill School in the amount of $112,000.
As motion.
Second.
Second. All in favor? All right, 8-0. Next item, Fire Department supplemental funds for Fire Station 1 HVAC, and we have no number. Is anyone prepared to speak for this?
Yes, I can. Last year, there was a project that came to town meeting for approval. I think off the top of my head, the number was 157.3, I think was the final number. The purpose of that was to do energy improvements at the fire department. That was attic insulation, replacing the current boiler, repiping, and taking care of some other HVAC issues. And I can't tell what the HVAC stands for. No. It's air conditioning. Thank you. And so this, what we did is we went out, as part of that project, we allocated $12,000 for an engineer to work with the town on establishing what the scope of work would be that we would put out to bid. The engineer put that scope of work out, and we received the bids back. And the bids that we received was a base project plus 2 additional options if the town chose to do those options. The base bid was $138,000, and we've already done the insulation project, and we applied $20,500 worth of environmental grants to the project. So we had basically a deficit of about $6,000 in the project. So we were going to meet with the vendor and figure out the procurement issue to close that gap. On Thursday, the fire department came forward and would like to pursue the other 2 options that were bid out as part of that project. So we don't have a lot of information, or don't have information to make any recommendation on this right now. But if the fire department would like, if the fire department would like to explain why we have to go with the option 1 and 2 now, they can explain that. But I do have an email out to the engineer asking what would be the harm in doing but they actually approved to go out to bid, which was that base project of $138,000 that's already been authorized. So.
Okay. Thanks. Comment from the floor. Sean?
Yeah, I didn't make a ton of copies because I wasn't going to make a huge presentation. This will outline the numbers a little different. It's not just 6,000 for the contract.
We'll keep one copy here and we'll send one down there. How's that?
The whole project is more than just the contract. There's more left to it than just the contract with the HVAC contractor. You'll see the breakdown shows the cost from the bid, which about 5 pages later, the letter from the engineer summarizes the bid. We're actually only asking for alternate 1. What's changed in that alternate is the air conditioning system. We were going to just do heating and hold back on the air conditioning system. We lost a compressor this spring. It cost us about $5,000. Still doesn't carry a warranty, so the units are beyond their serviceable life. To do the amount of work in this building and then go back and do the air conditioning, which could happen the day after they go to start the units up, will repeat a whole lot of damage. We'll have to be displaced from the building again. And that would be a pretty uncomfortable conversation in front of this board again for an underfunded project. That would be actually an emergency expenditure, because it'd be the middle of summer by the time this happens. We also have already used up our contingency. It's gone. And there's damage to the building that exists right now from the project starting, from the prior damage, and there's obviously going to be much more. That's not part of the bid with the HVAC contractor. That has to be done. The building's not going to be serviceable. It won't even function when this project's over without that money.
Okay. Other comments from the floor?
Just Mary, I'm not sure quite how to comment. I guess I'll say I respect the need to follow policy, process, and past practice in terms of how one does what we're trying to do here today, what you're here to do today. So we have this last-minute addition here, and we have another one you'll see later, both of which came up just recently. In fact, this just surfaced Thursday night. You're looking at information we have yet to see. So we decided to put this on here based on the limited understanding we had the other night, which was that there was a need identified that apparently we hadn't identified either in our original scope or as a result of the bid process, that we somehow missed the number that was approved last year. So personally, I don't know where we're at on this. The selectmen just voted to include it in this warrant at the 11th hour. It does sound like there's a need. We may continue to learn about this need further, as you know more than I do right now.
No, I don't.
Okay. But yes, you do. You know, because you're looking at something that I don't see. But the point is that it sounds like there's a problem. It sounds like that there's an opportunity to solve that problem if we get the full information in a timely enough manner to deal with it during this town meeting. What I do know is that they have a heating system over there that's not very reliable, requires a lot of maintenance. I hope that we had it fixed already, replaced already. I would hate to see us go through another winter next year without having dealt with it. But if it requires additional funds to do that well, let's deal with it. So I'm asking for you to. We may not have the answer today, but I would ask you to help us endeavor to get the right answer of what the need is, and if it needs to be done, try to get it done. So that's all I have to say.
So I'm going to bring the discussion up here, and I'll start it myself by saying that I am not arguing in general with the need. There may be a need there, there may not be a need there. I don't know. But my position on this is that we have been handed this, virtually now, and we have no information on it, and I am personally loath to make a recommendation for any number of funds that I don't know anything about, and I think it's just too late on this. And
Madam Chair, I had suggested at the Selectmen's meeting the other night that this be done through a special town meeting within the annual meeting. I was outvoted on that request, but that is another way procedurally you could put this in front of the town without violating the process that's been set up for doing these kinds of pre-town meeting preparations.
so I'm recommending, again, opening for discussion up here, but for
Oh, could we have more public comment?
we can, if,
I'd
if-
like to
but I
invite-
just wanted to
Okay.
make sure if there was first any further comment up here.
I have a question, maybe a
Okay.
comment,
Yeah.
is that maybe we should split this into two parts. I guess we've already approved, I forget the number you said, David, 150,000 or something like that. We could possibly vote, it seems to me, the concept has already been approved last year for the 150,000. We could vote for the 6,000 or whatever the number is, complete what the town has already approved.
He is going to find that 6,000
And then
elsewhere.
subsequent to that, it seems like this option one, or Sean, I don't know, the option one or two, it seems like at a minimum, since we've already waited a year and we didn't complete the project that was done last year, it seems like we should at least support completing that work, because it's only going to get more expensive to do, and it's going to be $7,000 underfunded next year. And then we can figure out what additional work needs to be done.
Well, I think that's separate from this particular article, and I just reiterate that our committee has not previously discussed this or reviewed it or anything else, and for that reason alone, I am personally against voting any
Well,
action on it.
To give Jeff some comfort, my understanding from the town administrator is that you will be able to find that 6,000.
Yeah, the 6,000 was, we can work that out with the vendor easy enough within the procurement laws. But it's the engineers came up with what the total scope of the project is. And it was much bigger than what was authorized, so we said, we got to break this up so that I can at least have something that we can get done that's out of the authorized money.
Total
So
scope
that's-
is, in addition, is the air conditioning too, or is just the original?
It's,
So when they scope,
you can explain it, actually.
A couple things to keep in mind. There is no champion in this project. Okay, I'm not responsible for that building. I'm trying to keep us from wasting more money than we already are. It's under their budget. This project was underfunded now twice, because the building was underfunded in the first place. So here we are the third time. We're making a pretty good round at that. I'm totally against fixing it and not fixing the air conditioning. I promise you, within a year or two, we're going to have a really uncomfortable situation. And the 34,000 that's the alternate will probably be double that. will be displaced out of the building, and there's no value in waiting. We also got a very attractive bid, both the base bid and the alternate. If we pass that up, the price goes up probably 30 to 40,000 just to go to the next highest bidder. So if we rebid, you can probably guess that low bid's not going to come back in, because he's probably losing money on it.
I would just repeat again that my argument is not with fixing the building, but with the way of handling it. And if they're offering a meeting within a meeting, I would prefer to see it handled that way than making a recommendation today on something I know nothing about.
Right, and I also want to point out, these are real numbers. The engineer, when we proposed it a year ago, it was based on some estimates. There was no professionals involved that were hired. This has now been out to bid. This is the real bid. These are the real numbers, minus some repairs that are in there as a contingency, and a very small portion of this.
So the bid was 138,000 for
You have this packet?
Yeah.
Go to the second to last page, and you'll see the engineers, the BLW engineering.
So it was 138,000.
That's his response back to us.
And we
Yeah.
originally gave approval last year for how much for this part? It was 150.
I think last year's town meeting approved 157, but that was also for insulation, which was 30, which is done now.
So the only thing that's missing is the air conditioning. That's what you're saying, is that you want the air conditioning put on top of the 138? Because you already have the monies appropriated for the rest of the project, correct? I'm just confused.
So if you look at the breakdown, you'll see that the contract, as it's bid, is going to be 174,000
Right, but that includes...
with the alternate.
That includes the air
If
conditioning.
you include the alternate, yeah, which is alternate one on that. We have to hold 10,000, or someone can find it in another budget to put that building back together. We will not be able to use the building, the offices, or anything else if we don't repair the work. If you choose to not hold a contingency, then, you could pull both of those out, but what are we going to do? But all those totaled leaves 132,000 we need. No, I'm sorry. We have 132,000 left right now, so we're going to be short 70,000.
So it's the contingencies plus the air conditioning is what you're actually looking for to
The
fund.
contingency is because it's good practice to hold on to a
I'm just
contingency, and
asking.
right now we don't have one.
Right, I'm just asking, yeah. Okay,
So how much are we
that's what
looking
it adds up to.
Underfunded
That, we're underfunded.
70,000?
Carol?
Carol Marple, Stony Brook Road. I'm completely in support of Mary's desire to honor the process and the procedure. Some things just come too late, no matter how good they are. But there is a legal way to satisfy both this need and the procedural question, and that is to, I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, but that is to call a special within our annual town meeting. And I urge you to do it that way, because it seems to me that's the right way to do it.
Who calls that, Carol?
Board of Selectmen call town meetings.
Yeah, so if I could
And the
speak...
Board of Selectmen seem willing to do that.
No, Mike mentioned it.
You're willing to do it.
Here's why we try to get this, or I want to see this on here now, assuming we had the information available from which we could make some smart decisions. Whatever you're looking at, I have no clue what it is. All I hear is 47
Okay,
numbers
that's
thrown
all I
around.
need to
I don't
hear.
know what they are, so I'm now in favor of what Mike's describing, because what you have, I
I don't
can't
even
support
know what
whatever
we
you're
have.
looking at. I can't support it.
Madam Chair, since we have nothing before us, no one is proposing anything. I recommend against this. I move
Yeah, I'd
that
like to
we, no
withdraw
favorable
this.
action.
So
You withdraw?
I'd like to withdraw this item. I'd like to ask if we could withdraw this item, and we will reconsider a special town meeting within the regular town meeting.
Okay.
If this item is proven to be worthy of it, which I have no clue it will be.
Okay, so
So I've asked for a motion to withdraw this item. I would second item, removing item E.
and we need to do nothing then, since you have
So-
withdrawn it.
So I'll take a vote. All in favor of withdrawing item E?
Okay.
All opposed? Abstain?
think that's putting procedure ahead of substance. If there's a need, it ought to be addressed.
Okay, it's done. Okay, Article 9. This is done. They have withdrawn
I will
the article.
So there'll be a special town meeting within the annual meeting.
I don't know what they'll do.
We don't know.
We don't know
But
yet.
for we, the residents, and you didn't know the numbers and
No.
what they're trying, will the fire department or somebody be bringing this up before
I
town
have
meeting?
no idea.
Well, they would have to.
Okay.
So I'm fully expecting that somebody's going to provide us all sorts of information. I'm going to want to know what the original
Thank you.
scope was, what's changed, what the numbers are, and what we're being asked to fund. That's what I'm going to need.
Okay, I'm going to close this
Thank you.
discussion because they have withdrawn the article and there's no point in pursuing anything any further. So I'm moving on now to Article 9. To see if the town will vote to raise and appropriate, transfer from available funds, or borrow pursuant to any applicable statute a sum of money, and if so, what sum, for the purpose of paying the costs of various items of capital equipment and/or improvements for the Dover-Sherborn Regional School District, including the payment of all costs incidental and related thereto pursuant to an intergovernmental agreement with the Dover-Sherborn Regional School District and the Town of Dover, to provide funding for such items, and to determine if any amount borrowed under this article shall be contingent upon the passage of a ballot question exempting the amounts required to pay for the bonds from the provisions of Proposition 2.5, or take any other action relative thereto. Do we have a proponent for the article to speak here?
Michael Lee, 28 Wildwood Drive.
Okay. Are you
Regional School
the,
Committee.
and you are the designated
Regional School
proponent?
Committee,
Okay. Not that
Capital
I,
Committee. So-
aren't always happy to hear from you, Michael.
Likewise. So we are going to bypass a presentation, if that's your pleasure.
It
We have
would.
provided you with our road show. We have been to numerous locations on both sides of the river. The total that we are requesting this year is $315,000, of which Sherborn's allocation would be $143,545.
Okay, I have 6, but
And
5
50
is good.
cents.
Ah, come on.
Okay, so 546
Rounding
then.
up.
And the details of this particular year's items are on the back side of page 3 of the presentation that we have in printed format. You know, if you want us to talk in length on this, we
I'm
can,
good,
but
Michael.
my suspicion is no.
I'm good. Are there any comments from the floor?
Selectmen support this item.
Any other, Bob? Yeah, oh, sure.
Just to
Right.
make it official, capital budget also supports this.
Okay, great. Are there any comments or questions up here from advisory? Okay, any? Okay. Any further comments from the floor in this? Okay, then I will take a motion to recommend favorable action on Article 9, which will execute as described the amount of $143,000, $143,546. I need to go back to DS and learn how to read my numbers. Excellent education over there. So, is there a move for that?
I so move.
Second? Second. All in favor? We're done. All present, voting unanimously on that. Okay, now that we have been able to spring the school folks from having to come back, I will take a lunch break, and I'm going to put 1:45 on that. That gives us about just over 20 minutes. Ask you all to be back then. Thank you.